Were you Mr. Bartley? Oh, let me move out of your space here. Absent. She let me know she would not be able to attend. I assume he'll be here.
Okay. This is this one now.
Yeah, but we're good to go. You. Having a quorum present, I will call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order at 6:33. Present, I have Councilor Lopez, I'm Linda Vacan, and Councilor Bartley. So, the first order of business would be to take up item 1.
Motion to take item number 1. Out of committee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 1 is the approval of previous meeting minutes, and the set of minutes that we had previously for review was from August 9th. So hopefully you've all had a chance to look at those by now. Yep. Can I have a motion on those?
Approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. A motion to take up item 2.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 2, filed by Councilor Lopez, ordered that the City Council adopt a special permit application for any methadone, Suboxone clinics coming to the city. This is a continued public hearing, so I need a motion to
reopen the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is open. We have had 1, 2, 3 hearings so far on this matter, and so tonight I'm hoping is going to be the final round. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? If you could come to the microphone, make sure it's on, give us your name and address, and sounds good.
Hi, good evening. My name is Erica Steinbauer. I live at 18 Howard Street here in Holyoke, and I am a registered nurse in the medication-assisted treatment program at Holyoke Health Center.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to speak the last time this was heard, and tonight I have the joint written testimony on behalf of Holyoke Health Center and Providence Behavioral Health Hospital. So I wanted to submit that for the record.
Okay.
And would you like me to read it for the record?
If you would like.
Okay, sure.
Oh, thanks, Dave.
So dear Chairwoman Vacone and members of the committee, this is a joint statement issued by the Holyoke Health Center and Providence Behavioral Health Hospital in response to Councilor Lopez's order that the City Council adopt a special permit application for any methadone Suboxone clinics coming to the city, issued on 6/7/16. This is a proposal to limit the placement of treatment centers for people with opioid use disorder to industrial zones and not to be located within 5,000 feet of residences, schools, and parks. Both organizations speak in shared agreement when we say that we are concerned that this proposal will present significant barriers to treatment at a time when opioid addiction and overdose have reached epidemic proportions, and the acute need for opioid use disorder treatment has reached such a high level that the capacity to provide this treatment has proven to not be sufficient to meet our community's need. The Holyoke Health Center is a federally qualified community health center that has provided services in the Holyoke community for over 45 years. We are among the few outpatient organizations to achieve the highest quality rating from the National Committee for Quality Assurance and the Joint Commission accreditation. We provide primary care, dentistry, case management, behavioral health, and pharmacy services to many Holyoke residents. One of the services that we provide is medication-assisted treatment for opioid dependence, where we treat patients with the medication buprenorphine or Suboxone. Providence Behavioral Health Hospital, a part of Mercy Medical Center and Trinity Health New England, is the largest provider of inpatient psychiatric and addiction services in the region, and is the only leading provider with a continuum of substance use disorder treatment services that includes inpatient, outpatient, and specialized opioid treatment programs. Providence Behavioral Health Hospital delivers care that is rooted in the mission of the original Sisters of Providence and is oriented by our core values of justice, reverence, integrity, stewardship, and commitment to the poor. Both the Holyoke Health Center and Providence Behavioral Health Hospital provide high-quality treatment for substance use disorder in the midst of an unprecedented opioid crisis, one that has spared no one, does not discriminate, has and is continuing to leave an impact on every one of us. The treatment services that we provide, medication-assisted treatment, or MAT, is one that has proven to be highly effective in treating multiple substance use disorders, including specifically opioid use disorder. Our shared concern regarding Counselor Lopez's ordinance is that it will create additional barriers for accessing care, rendering many individuals unable to overcome them and get into treatment. Relegating facilities that provide MAT services such as buprenorphine or Suboxone and methadone to isolated industrial locations at least 5,000 feet away from residences, parks, and areas that are generally inaccessible by public transportation compounds the difficulties individuals will have in accessing services. In addition to increasing access issues, this ordinance adds to the existing stigma and feelings of shame that many people have when they become aware that they have a problem that requires medical attention. On a national and state level, many leaders are increasing the recognition that addiction is a disease that is worthy of treatment, not judgment. Governor Baker launched the State Without Stigma campaign and designated the opioid addiction crisis as the state's greatest public health threat. Evidence shows that medication-assisted treatment with methadone, buprenorphine, or naltrexone is the gold standard of care for the treatment of opioid addiction. More than 50 years of research evidence demonstrates that MAT services reduce the use of illicit drugs, reduces rates of HIV and of hepatitis C, reduces crime rates, and most importantly, reduces overdose death rates. While Counselor Lopez's ordinance states that the objective is to regulate facilities that provide MAT services, all opioid treatment programs are currently subject to both state and federal regulations, which have an exhaustive track record of promoting safety for patients and community, high-quality clinical and medical treatment for patients, and interventions that support individual and family health and wellness. Additional regulations beg the question whether there would be an actual benefit to patients in our community while simultaneously placing administrative burdens on the providers. Evidence shows that individuals who are engaged in recovery within their community produce positive outcomes that extend beyond the individual patient and into the entire community through maintaining stable employment and being active in family and community life. At a time where there is increased awareness and recognition that addiction is a disease and people who suffer from it are worthy of treatment, not judgment, this ordinance restricting the locations of key programs to industrial zones that are disconnected from our community spaces continues to send the message of marginalization and stigmatization. The goal of treatment of opioid addiction is for individuals to reintegrate into the community, for people to get back to the activities that each of us strives to do: work, family, school, parenting, and other productive activities. We can only meet these goals if our entire community helps to support solutions and commits to working together. We believe that the evidence is clear, medication-assisted treatment works, and has the great potential to continue to improve and save many lives. Our goal is to make a difference and see our community thrive, not die from opioid overdoses and long-term addiction. Regretfully, we believe that this ordinance would have the effect of limiting access to treatment and put undue burdens and restrictions on providers, and is being introduced at a time when our community needs just the opposite. All of us working together to provide solutions and opportunity. Thank you for your time, and please contact us with any questions you may have. It's signed by Robert Roos, Chief Medical Officer of Providence Behavioral Health Hospital, and our Chief Medical Officer, Alejandro Esparza.
Thank you. And we have the hard copy that we can keep on file? Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I just ask, I know the program through Providence Systems is a clinic, but is the medication-assisted treatment patient by patient at the health center, or is it also a clinic setting like the other one?
So my program director, Tammy Kozik, is also here.
Oh, okay.
You want to answer?
Hi. And can I just get the proper spelling of your last name?
Yeah. Steinbauer. Beauer.
Eauer. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tammy Kozik. I'm the program manager for the medication-assisted treatment program at the Holyoke Health Center. So we're a primary care setting, so we're treating patients through the primary care setting. So it's in an individual treatment within it, but we have dedicated doctors and nurses who are treating those patients in dedicated times and days that we're doing that treatment.
Okay, thank you. Because I just want to be clear that my understanding as we're looking at this ordinance is around clinics per se, not the nature of primary care treatment. So I don't perceive that there's any interest, at least from what I've heard, and I won't speak for my other committee members, in limiting the approach of treatments that a physician chooses for their patient. It's more a matter of a balance of how much service in a small city we can provide. And I totally hear the message in what you just read about treating people in place and helping them reintegrate into their community. And some of the discussions we've been having are how many people are coming to our community for treatment that aren't from our community. So we're trying to find a balance so that in the area and in the broader region, everybody is sharing the treatment as well as the reintegration into community. So I haven't had the sense, at least from the maker of the order, that he's against treatment. And so I think what we're trying to find is a balance. But I totally appreciate the input. And I want to make sure, is this the copy? Okay.
You have a copy?
So we do have the copy. Does everybody have a copy?
I have a copy right here.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to add anything else to the letter?
I don't think there's anything else to add to the letter. I think our statement speaks about, just our point of view as well as Providence, which is a clinic,
Right.
and our overall feelings about, having more treatment for people here in the community, because we do believe there is a shortage. Our program is really essentially in the last 6 months gone from a steady 130 to 200 patients. And they're coming in several a week, I think. And one day we did 6 intakes. So, and these are patients who live in the area who are our primary care patients. So there is definitely a need. The opioid epidemic is increasing. There's been multiple overdoses in the community that we're very concerned about. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to this treatment. And there's some different levels of treatment too. So we're providing one level of treatment. Providence is providing even a higher level of treatment, and that's why it's really important to have multiple pathways for recovery for our clients, and that comes in different forms of different treatment centers, and we think it's really important to have that available to the people who need it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for members? Councilor Bartley?
Thank you. If you would, just out of your, and I thank you for all your work that you do at the Providence. It's important work. When you say they're from the community, you mean where exactly?
What do you mean, from the community?
Yeah, you said that that was your words. These intakes are coming from, they're from people.
They're our primary care patients, so they're within the health center. And within Holyoke and surrounding communities who receive services here.
So which surrounding communities? Which surrounding communities?
Oh, South Hadley, Chicopee, probably some people from Springfield, but the majority is Holyoke.
Yeah, and are there service providers in South Hadley, Chicopee, and Springfield?
We also have another community health center, Chicopee Health Center, which is a part of the Holyoke Health Center, and we also have a Suboxone program there, and so we provide services there as well. I'm not familiar with any programs in South Hadley.
Springfield?
Springfield, I believe Providence has a methadone program there. I also believe that Clean Slate has one program there as well. And I think there's a few other smaller private organizations.
And does your letter didn't cite to it, but I assume you could support the assertion that MAT services reduce crime rates We had a chief of police in here several months ago advising us of the opposite in Holyoke. But can you cite to something that says it reduces crime rates? A third party says that?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have a specific citing example.
That'd be awesome if you would. So if you could send it to Councilor Vacan. Yep. Her email's on the city website, and she can disseminate it as she sees fit. I think just in your letter, you at least twice that I saw talk about judgment, or at least the authors of the letter, the two physicians talk about judgment. I don't think this is about judgment, judging the people. Though they say it twice in there, so I sense a little bit of antipathy and a little bit of misinformed point of view. So I think that the order has nothing to do with judgment or stigmatization at all of the individuals that are treating. I think the order has to do with at some point the Springdale area, at some point the city of Holyoke has to say, when does it end? Where does it end? Town of South Hadley, you just told me, doesn't have any sort of clinic, and yet clients are coming from South Hadley. Where does it start in South Hadley? These are just rhetorical questions. I know you can't answer them. Mm-hmm. And again, you're not the author, and I don't want to shoot the messenger, and I apologize if I'm coming off that way. So it's Dr. Roos and Dr. Esparza Perez that wrote the letter. You just are here to represent them. For whatever reason, they wrote the letter, and they weren't willing to come on their own to back up their own words and answer these questions themselves. Wouldn't that have been nice? But I appreciate you guys coming down here. And again, let me reiterate, I really do appreciate all the work you do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Lopez?
I just want to state for the record that looking at the program that we have in the city, I don't have any issues. They're well run. But I just want to make sure that we take control. We have enough problems in the city. I'm not saying that the one that are running right so far in the city are creating problems, but we have some problems that I just want to make sure that we have some prevention and help the police and the community. Where I heard that they want to put another clinic, and I'm behind 100% treating people, but I'm also behind 100% of the residents of the community of this city, and that's why I filed the order. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this order relative to the methadone Suboxone?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Jay Bryanus, the CEO at the Holyoke Health Center. And I appreciate what the order is trying to accomplish, and absolutely appreciate the concerns that everybody has about sightings of services in different areas. So I guess I'm coming from looking ahead a little bit. The Holyoke Health Center right now, almost all of our patients that are getting services, or let me rephrase that, all of our patients getting services, all the people getting services are patients of ours. So they get the primary care here at the health center. That's basically a requirement of admission into our program. We have waiting lists, and so we take care of our patients first. But I could see the day that we would be expanding a drug treatment service, and it could be, in Councilor Vacan's words, a clinic. You know, clinic is an undefined term, really. Some health centers call themselves clinics. We call ourselves a health center. Some people call ourselves, primary care sites. So the word clinic, I appreciate. I think you're thinking of like dedicated clinics just to the treatment of substance abuse issues. But I could see us either receiving a grant or a request from the state, or providing a service for veterans who need substance abuse services, and we could have a clinic just for veterans if the powers that be in our organization felt we could provide a service, and because of the resources we have at the Holyoke Health Center, that we might be a good site for that. Holyoke Medical Center could be equally a good site for that. The Holyoke Soldiers Home could be a good site for that. And all of us would be within the 5,000 feet radius that is mentioned here. So my concern is only that, and as my colleagues here have said, we don't want to limit services, and we may be the most logical ones to provide the services in the future. You have other standalone entities that may be sort of a different relationship to the community, but I don't want to sort of throw out the baby with the bathwater here. And so I think whether it's a grandfather process or just an acknowledgement that a comprehensive service site might be different than a standalone single entity, because there is a different relationship to the community and to our patients. And I just don't want the ordinance to, if it goes forward, to set an arbitrary limit that we may regret later on. I believe this problem that we're in right now nationally is not over. You know, a lot of people are working hard at it. I don't know what direction that problem and that issue is going to take in the future, what new resources might be made available, and what new service opportunities there might be. So I just don't want the ordinance as proposed, I think, is a very limiting issue, and I want to make sure we don't foreclose potentially important and helpful services down the road.
Thank you for your input, and I totally, can hear from the provider side, which is where you're coming from, and we need to balance, input from public safety, from the provider community, and the residents in terms of finding that balance. Do you have any suggestions to bring to bear on the ordinance that's before us relative to that concern?
At least the two, vague mentions that I just offered of comprehensiveness of service and a grandfather process, that if one or both of those two were built into the ordinance, it would potentially protect organizations like ourselves or the hospital or others who might, want to expand a service that we may desperately want, to be expanded and not have this kind of limitation. So that, at least on the positive side, allows us to say who can provide services. The question of who can't or shouldn't in a certain area is a more difficult issue, I think. Like in any industry, I think you sometimes get a broad brushstroke that covers a lot of things that you don't really want to cover with. You'd rather have some finer strokes. And I think, small single-purpose entities sometimes have a different message than what a comprehensive community-based organization would. And as we've also said, doctors' offices are, obviously treating patients, but who knows how they'll evolve in the future. The healthcare is changing very dramatically and very quickly, so we have to understand that. Yeah.
And that is true. But we do have to be concerned about place of treatment as well as nature of the treatment. But your points are well taken.
Just look at the comprehensive issue and the grandfathering issue. I think those might be, at least in Holyoke, they'd be important for, I think, the medical center as well as ours. I don't know if the medical center has any plans. I'm not suggesting they do. But should they want to, and they might be a good site for programming, this ordinance would offer an obstacle for them. So, okay.
Anybody have anything? Councilor McGivern? Oh, was that a yes or a?
Well, that's a yes. My understanding is you're going to close the public hearing. So
that is my intention, because I mean, other than.
Well, I just like to be heard on their discussion before you make a recommendation at whichever time you feel is appropriate.
Okay, then thank you. Thank you for your input. Yeah. Councilor McGivern, you have the floor.
Although I agree with Councilor Lopez's concern about saturation, it's something that I think has concerned all of us over the years, not just in this area, but in the area of group homes, in the area of treatment, a lot of different types of treatment. But the request before us is a special permit to control location. I disagree with that. And I'll try to explain why in a nutshell and maybe save a little bit for the full city council meeting. Treatment is very important when you're in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of a life and death crisis. And to have treatment available for people who need it, methadone and Suboxone is only one form of treatment for substance abuse. It's not the one I think is the best at all times, but for some individuals, they feel it's the best. Therefore, on their road to recovery, it certainly is something that needs to be available. We cannot control group homes. We cannot control residential homes that come into this city. They can go anywhere they want under the constitutional right of an educational program. Therefore, someone who has and I could cite a half a dozen of them within walking distance of here, all in residential neighborhoods. You know, group home, residential home kind of makes sense. It's in a residential neighborhood. But they are the individuals who need this type of treatment. It's a medical treatment. If a person in South Hadley has a heart attack, they got probably 3 options. Holyoke Medical is the closest. Bay State is a little bit further. Maybe they'll make it to Cooley Dick. Outside of that, the South Hadley person is coming into this city if it's a crisis until they can be transferred somewhere else. If we want to stop the saturation of what happens in an urban city like Holyoke, we need to get our legislatures in here. We need to do this on an upper level where the state forces suburban communities to do more for low income, to do more for substance abuse, to do more for the things that come secondhand in the urban cities. A location special permit is not going to stop a treatment clinic from coming to Holyoke. It's just going to help us locate or force a location of that treatment clinic, you know, in the city of Holyoke. They will find a place, and it may not be in a commercial location, may not be the best seating in terms of what they're trying to provide and what the people who need it are trying to provide. I think as much as I work in the trial court, I think most of you know that if someone is committed to recovery, we are committed to helping that person down that road of recovery. If someone is not committed to recovery, we're committed to getting them off the street. And I think there's a fine line there, but I think that's something that we do on a daily basis, and we understand it. Special permit to me is just a way to send a message, but I think we'd be much more successful if we got the state to listen to us, not just for Holyoke, but for Springfield, for Chicopee, as far as saturation goes.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to be heard relative to this at this time? The purpose of the public hearing is to take in information. The committee can then debate the information that's been received and then make a recommendation to the city council. Typically, and the process in this case, is that the planning board has the hearing open also, and it is the process of this committee to wait to hear input from the planning board. We have asked them to provide us with a recommendation relative to the dimension questions that have come up around the 5,000 feet, and if it would be completely prohibitive versus limiting or defining. And so we will, in their recommendation, hear back from them in that regard. At least that is our request to them. So if there is no further new information to be put forth, and I'm not seeing any or interest in having more information, I'd accept a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing and wait for the planning board recommendation.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed, and we will be waiting for the planning board recommendation. And I understand through our attorney that this starts a clock ticking. So the city council has, I believe, 90 days, Sarah, that we must act on this within. So the planning board will need to give us input, I would say safely within 70 days if they wish us to consider it, right? Okay. Thank you all for coming down and giving us your perspective and your information. Have a good night. Okay.
Motion to take up item 3, Madam Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, filed by me, Councilor Vacan, ordered that no budgeted salary line can be increased following approval of the budget without an appropriation submitted to and approved by the City Council. I know we have received, I think you have both there, if you can pass them out. 2 communications. And we have some folks here on this matter tonight. If it is the no, I don't think any of us have had a chance, so give us a minute to look these letters over, if you would.
You want to read them, Madam Chair?
Well, actually, if the committee is interested, if you want to suspend rules, we can let the people who've brought them read them into the record. Or if you prefer I read them into the record, either way is fine with me.
I can read.
Okay. But
well, I know we can all read here.
Right,
guess,
but I mean it's a matter of.
I guess it's just so the public
I can't
knows
read without a copy.
What we're doing. Well, Joe, you can walk over, or you could, you know.
I can make it into an airplane and fly over. My knees are hurting, Kevin. Come on.
Be kind. Okay.
I won. Thanks.
So Jeff Burkott has submitted a letter. He's unable to attend. And Robert Dixon has submitted a letter. Is Robert Dixon here? Okay. So what is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll suspend the rules. Why don't we hear from Mr. Dixon?
Yeah,
if he wants to speak.
Right.
Let's hear from all of them. Anybody that wants to speak?
Okay, so on the motion to suspend rules, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So if someone would like to come to the microphone to review their letter, that would be fine.
Could just before we get into that, Madam Chair, could you just kind of go through briefly the proposal first before we talk about the opposition to the proposal?
Sure.
Let's briefly go over the proposal.
Sure. I do think there is a bit of misunderstanding about the proposal. The nature of the proposal is that, for example, there is a salary line that could be $1 million. The order that I've filed does not address within that salary line what happens to that $1 million. It addresses when a different line in the budget is going to be moved into that line. There is no intention here to micromanage a budget line item, but there is definitely an intention to know when line items are being shifted that then become the base of the next year's budget. We saw this happen on a couple of instances. It had nothing to do with union contracts. It had to do with positions being created within departments in mid-year and then becoming part of the base of the budget going forward. And that was what came to light in the budget process. So I do want to make it clear that that is the nature and intent of the order. But having said that, if you want to...
Do we have the actual ordinance or the order proposed, the wording of the order?
Hang on a second. While I'm pulling up the...
here it is right here. Ordered that no budgeted salary line can be increased following approval of the budget without an appropriation submitted to and approved by the city council. Very good. Okay.
Right.
I think we got our arms around it.
Right. I think it was pretty straightforward, and it's just what it is. So if you would like to go over your letter, and if you'll just give us your name and address to be formal on the microphone in case people are watching from home.
Hi, Bob Dixon, and I'm the representative of the IBPO and the National Association of Government Employees here in the city of Holyoke. I represent both units in the police department and city hall employees and so on and so forth. I live at 45 Larrabee Lane in West Springfield, Massachusetts, and I've been with the unions here for 13 or 14 years. I've been doing union work for about 35. As I understood the problem here, and the point of my letter here was that we have been making somewhere as part of the grievance procedure settlements, and I was informed that it looked like the city council wanted to step in at some point in time and have the authority to stop that settlement by not appropriating funds. If that's not what we're here about tonight, then I'll keep my remarks very short.
Okay.
Because what we were concerned about here was the city council trying to basically intrude on the powers of the mayor or the executive branch. That's an argument between you and the executive branch, not me. But I have worked with Sarah Carroll here, the solicitor, to make settlements along the line here. And I was being told at one point that if you make a settlement, that the city council wants to have the ability to stop that settlement because there's not enough money in the budget, or so. Well, essentially inserting themselves into the grievance procedure, and that's why I want to stay away from that happening at all.
Right.
So the whole point of my letter, I'll get into what I was looking at it now. I think that was going to be a more costly method to go. So I'll read the letter verbatim, and then I'll just leave it at that. Regarding the agenda item 3, the police officers and supervisors, local 388 and 409, respectively, of the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, oppose your effort to have the authority to limit or block the transfer of funds within a department or departments, which would compensate employees who are asked or ordered to perform functions which cost additional funds. We feel that council is encroaching upon the authority and the ability of the executive branch of government to settle financial disputes with the appropriate bargaining units. The IBPO NAGE has settled many issues and generally involve the issue of working in a higher classification position and the money which is necessary to compensate the employee for the extra work or more complex assignment. Basically, the city and the union have reached an agreement which is funded by the executive action and approval. Having the ability to resolve issues between the mayor's office, solicitor, and the unions, we avoid the more litigious and costly procedure of arbitration. The ability to settle our disagreements prevents the spending of excessive funds caused by the high cost of arbitration and the possible appeals to the courts. Today, one dispute submitted to arbitration could cost approximately $3,500 to $4,000 just for the arbiter. This does not include the award, and the settlement can be rejected by the city, but the appeal costs even more. While the city council is responsible to maintain the budget as effectively as possible, the attempt to micromanage line items and prevent the ability of the unions and the mayor's office to negotiate decisions within the language of various contracts would actually carry a higher price and have the opposite effect of the results you seek. I think each department should have the discretion and the ability to pay with the mayor's approval for unforeseen issues that inherently arise from time to time between the unions and the city. There are instances when the more costly road litigation is the only path to resolution, but the parties, we don't want to make that as the only path. I respectfully submitted myself.
And thank you for putting that forth, but that particular aspect didn't even enter into my thinking. I'm thinking global budget. I'm not thinking about encroaching on the executive authority of the mayor, whose authority is to deal with contract matters. Okay, so there's no interest in that regard. However, from the macro point of view, there definitely is an interest in making sure that when we have passed a budget and we've gone through all the public hard work of cutting the budget, because that's the only thing we have the ability to do to try to keep some fiscal sanity in the city, it is critical that once we set the budget, that it just doesn't change by $500,000 because things got shifted from one line to another and we were unaware. But there's no interest in getting into the level of detail that you're describing.
I appreciate that. And like I said before, the issues between yourselves and the mayor is not my issue at this point.
Right.
The only way I really get involved in any of that is sometimes through Sarah and I. We've made settlements that cost, you know, $500 or $1,000.
Right.
And the question was the council eventually going to try to basically get into the process of managing those extra funds that are necessary? If it is, and it blocks us, the only route I would have left, just for the future, the only route I would have left to resolve an issue would be arbitration. And arbitrations are crazy prices these days. So.
Right, right, and there's no interest in taking money out of the account that the legal department has for dealing with these kind of issues. It's not to change the budget process, it's so that there's a transparency and there's not expenses built into the budget throughout the year that then change the base for the next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jourdain, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah. No, I think, Bob, to make you feel better about it, certainly I don't, the issue with settlements, I'll give you one example of a settlement that I think you would feel, perhaps as a taxpayer, the same as we feel, that it was concerning, and I'll talk about the city solicitor's settlement out the door, the $45,000. We'll talk about that one in a minute. But you know, these we give Patrolman Joe you know, $500 for a clothing allowance that was allowed to him, and we're doing this, and that. I mean, it's really not concerning that. What this is trying to hold is the integrity of the budget process. For example, what I have experienced over the years is we work very hard on a budget, and it really happens in departments that typically have large overtime budgets. I'll say police. It way transcends this police chief, so this has nothing to do with Jim Neiswanger. But this has been going on for the 2 decades I've been here. Is we've been very good about funding police positions. But let's just say arguendo, I have seen situations where whether it's fire personnel, DPW personnel, sometimes police personnel, where the council makes a decision that, say, 5 positions were vacant right now, and the mayor comes in to fund all the positions, including 5 that were vacant. Maybe the council says, you know what, we want to keep everybody on, we want to keep 3, but we can't fund 2. Like, we had this down the DPW. They had a couple extra positions there. We hadn't been filled in 2 years, so we cut one of them, okay, one of the vacant jobs. Well, if Mr. Fuqua turned around and then just took his overtime line after we passed the budget and transfers the money day 1, July 2nd, right, after the budget starts, and puts the money right back into the line, and then he goes and says 6 months later, oh, I'm short on my overtime. You know, well, hold on a minute. We funded the overtime correctly. We didn't fund this over here, right? So it's a way of growing the budget and basically throws out the whole point of even having a budget. Because as you come to learn under the municipal finance rules, all the salary lines of the personnel lines, because there's basically 2 sections, this whole personnel, with the just the okay of the department head and the mayor, they can move any of those monies from personnel to personnel without any say from us, or expense to expense without any say from us. So we go through, oh yes, 12 pencils, 6 erasers, and we got all these monies and all these lines, and then the next day, it's like watching Chinese checkers, right? All the money goes sliding around to all the different accounts and all these transfers. That's not okay. That's not okay. And this ordinance is apparently necessary to put some limitation, at least on the salary side of it. Because on the expense, I'm not so worried. 1, they're usually a smaller portion of the budget. Number 2, if somebody says, well, I have this much for gas, but I didn't need so much, so I put it in car repair, or I put it in radios, or I did something like this, and these monies move around. But in salaries, where you could have a department head theoretically start handing out raises, this is the one that blows my mind, right? You see, and we've seen this in the non-union heads particularly, I find it most egregious, where somebody comes in 6 months into a year, say we cut out a portion of it, and the mayor says, hey, I've decided to give so-and-so an extra amount of money, more than what the prior person or what it was budgeted. I can just start sliding money around between some of the salary lines, increase those, pay it, and now in the next budget, as counselors will recall, we had to go back and pare those all down at the next thing. And people are like, but the mayor said I was supposed to get X amount of money. Yeah, but there was never an appropriation for that amount of money. So that's an example. I gave you the first illustration would be positions we cut are refunded with other monies. Okay, so the classic example on one thing that would be per se a settlement, not nickel dime stuff that you're talking about, but one where we had the law department solicitor. The mayor had money in her line from her salary, and he just transferred it over and wrote the woman a check for $45,000 with no vote of the city council. That's not okay, right? There should be a conversation of checks and balances from this room that says to the chief executive, you can or you cannot do these things. And so to start moving those things from one personnel line to create other new liabilities extraneous to the budget, there should be public conversation, checks and balances on doing that. So that concerns me. So I want to be able to interject some level of accountability there to that situation. So, you know, basically I think those are the big ones. I think the other thing that would concern me is if somebody decided to start creating additional positions and moving different monies around to like start part funding different positions for different people. They could use some, for example, somebody theoretically could take, if we had an extra clerical line, they could fund that into an actual titled line in the personnel and then go hire somebody. And then as long as they have enough money to pay them for the rest of the fiscal year, they'll deem that as legal. And then now the city council, if we don't cut it out in the next budget, that'll come in for a fully funded position. So someone could just say, well, I got 3 months left. I got $10,000 for extra clerical help, but I'm going to call that the new aid to my office. It's this type of accountability stuff that we're trying to police. And this is kind of where we're at. We have a very, and I think you'll appreciate that we have a very Spartan budget at this point. We got $2.3 million in free cash. We had to use about $1.1 million of it to balance the budget, so we're down to 1.2. And the only reason we have that 1.2 left is because we really went with the meat cleavers on the budget this past June, and we made lots of cuts. Otherwise, you'd have no free cash right now. So that's kind of where we're at with these type of things. I'm open to hear other suggestions, but I mean, basically, some of these type of good government finance changes are kind of necessary in order to ensure that, you know, we have a budget, we stick to a budget, unless we're going to have a conversation as to why in a vote that says why we should do something else. And I will say this council has a very generous record of supporting settlements. I can't think of the last time we voted down a settlement for what? I mean, we just did one for what, 200 and something thousand for the lady next door to the building over here, right? We just paid that one out. I mean, if it's reasonable and it's substantiated, all these different employment lawsuits that we've seen come through here, we magically find the money to appear for all those. All of those have required city council votes because they'll go to the claims and damages line, right? If that's what ultimately happens, you know, transfers have to be made for those things. So I think if it's a bigger ticket item, you know, maybe we put a $1 threshold on here. You know, maybe you can't move more than, if you guys, I'd love to hear input. If you got stuff that's $500, $1,000, we're not worried about that. What I'm concerned about is, you know, refunding a $30,000 position or a $40,000 position or giving somebody a $45,000 settlement. Those things should come through city council for a vote. No taxpayer wants their mayor on just their signature alone to be given those kind of monies out the door with one say. That's why we have checks and balances. Nor should we be spending that kind of money without the mayor's okay. All set?
Councilor McGivern?
I think you raised some legitimate concerns, and I agree with the committee's in the intent of the order. And where we're trying to go is to correct the wrongs that Kevin just pointed out. But any contract, whether it's by negotiation or arbitration, that has an impact on the budget is subject to city council approval. And recently, that's not been happening.
Right.
And that's a major problem. Last year, we saw the salary of the chief of the fire department increased. Still haven't seen the contract.
We still have not seen that.
Still don't even know who gave permission to do that salary by contract, because when we did the police chief by contract, we adopted an ordinance under Mayor Marty Dunn many years ago. But if you're on the same page as us, I think you understand that, yes, we have to see contracts that have an impact on the budget, or we don't interfere with negotiations, but we have to say the city has enough money to do something, to pay something. The only thing I disagree with when we cut the budget is we cut money. We should be cutting ordinances if we're eliminating a position, because the word in this order that is needs to be adjusted is appropriation. Transfers of money within line items aren't appropriations. That money has already been appropriated by us because it's in a line item. It's a transfer. And it's really state statute that allows mayors, to do and department heads to do this, not a city ordinance.
It's a financial transfer.
The appropriation is misleading. If there's free cash, even though it was dollars that were recouped, they do have to be reappropriated. And if they go into a line item, we all know we have to vote on the free cash. If grant money comes in, we have to accept the grant money before it goes anywhere, before it's spent. Contracts negotiated, we have to accept the contract before the monies can be spent. But it's not appropriation that's our problem. It's a transfer that's our problem without us knowing. And unfortunately, there's so many of them on a daily basis, most of them mundane and nothing that we should be looking at or micromanaging. It's the big ones that bring us to adopt language like this.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. In that spirit, I actually would entertain a motion to amend the order to substitute financial transfers for budgeted salary line, because that really is what we're aiming at.
I think you should say that no financial transfer should be made into a personnel services line item shall not be increased by financial transfer without the approval of the city council over a certain, I would say, threshold, like over $1,000 or something. This way, if there was something de minimis, like, $200 or $300 or $500, that wouldn't maybe necessitate a vote. I wouldn't be adverse to that.
Is that a motion?
Yeah,
Can you?
That's a motion.
Okay, so I'm hearing that the motion is ordered that no financial transfer into a personnel services account can be made without appropriation submitted to and approved by the city council if in excess of $1,000.
No need for the word of appropriation. Just say without approval of the city council.
Without approval.
Oh yeah, sure, Chief. Just one second. So second. So that's the amendment on.
That's on the table right now.
Are you basically saying every transfer I do has to come before you?
For personnel services, right.
So everything in the personal services transfer side.
Well, here's the thing though.
Because we have a lot of them to make to get through the year. I think I'll be here every week, and I think you're really going to interrupt the operation. Originally, we were talking about the salary account. Now you're talking about everything on the personal services.
Well, those are salary lines. Those are all personnel services lines. Those are wages.
That's what we mean. We don't mean your other lines. We mean the salary lines.
Well, the problem is
whatever's in the patrolman's salary account is a patrolman's salary account. Whatever's in the supervisor, I get that.
But those are technically all one account. You can move those around. The statute says personnel services. You can move those in any of those departments, any of those line items without approval of the city council currently, under current law.
Correct.
And we're talking about changing that.
Right.
Okay, that's the just so we got our arms around the issue.
So does this include, now you kind of like put...
Can you come
you got to speak to the microphone, state your name.
Yeah, you have to.
Sergeant Hart, Oil Police, now it kind of reads like all transfers going out and in personnel services. Where previously you said just transfers going into salary. So now it's like the whole thing transfers in and out. You want every transfer.
Where would you transfer? If you transfer it to an expense line, that already requires city council approval.
No.
Yes, it does.
Within the personnel services.
Anything that goes personnel to expense or expense to personnel.
Expenses and personal services.
Yes, that requires.
Already requires city council vote under Chapter 44.
Right.
So,
but personnel within personnel
does not currently. We're debating changing that.
transfers coming out. So now you're...
Well, because you could only transfer it, if you decrease this line, you'd be increasing this line.
Correct.
So so if you just stated any increase, it's the same thing, because you can't take it from, it's a yin and yang, right? If this goes down, this goes up. So
you're considering a sick leave buyback as a salary position? It
is. It's a salary line. It's wages.
And I believe there's
those come to us already.
No.
Like parade. So everything in that you're saying is salary in the personnel.
All personnel service lines are technically for compensation for wages. They could be for different reasons, like some could be Quinn bill, in your case, Quinn bill, sick leave buyback, vacation buyback. Some lines you have patrolman, could be a sergeant, could be whatever, the chief. I mean, all these lines right now, you can move those in between with just the department head signature and approval of the mayor. Right.
So now you're saying you're proposing to have it come before you?
Over a certain threshold, yeah, that's what we're debating, that's right.
So what would happen in the event that line item goes in the red? Should we just
You can't put it in the red. The auditor should deny the transfer request. You can't make a line item go negative.
So then we can't hire matrons to watch the prisoners. When that line item goes 0, now we got to put a request in.
Well, you'd already have to do that now. Unless he transfers from, say, overtime to matrons, you would have to come and say, we don't have enough, period, right? You have to get a free cash transfer and bring it in to move it into matrons. But that already would require a city council vote, because you're taking unappropriated funds, free cash, as defined by the DOR, right? There's a ruling that says free cash is considered unappropriated monies. Those require a city council vote.
Let me give them an example.
No, we would be taking it not from free cash, but from within that personnel
services side.
Yeah, right now they're just cards, and you just keep reshuffling the deck.
Right. So we would
spending it.
We wouldn't have to go through the process of the city council. So now we bring it for the full city council, correct? And then it'd be referred to finance, correct? And then back to
correct.
So we can't foresee how many prisoners we have and when we're going to hire matrons. So there could be a point where we're in the red. Well, we're at 0, and now we're waiting for this.
Yeah, but John, you got to budget it. You got to budget it correctly. And then secondarily is if you're way off, right, then you got to come in and get our approval of it. That's all. What our concern is let's just say I said you want 8 matrons. This is the concern that some of us have. Say there's 8 budgeted matrons and only 6 are full. So the council says, you know what, we're in austerity measures. There's 2 openings. We're not going to fill those. So we cut the mayor's appropriation of budgeting 8 down to 6 that you got, right? Chief says, to hell with the city council. I'm going to take the money for those 2 matrons out of overtime, and he just slides it into matrons, and now they're back up to 8, and he goes and hires the 2 after we just voted to say don't do that. Then he'll show up 6 months later and say, I got no money. My overtime's short. Right? And then he'll say, well, you know, I look out for the people and I'm for public safety and people break into your houses if you don't give me the money. And I mean, I've heard all these speeches for 100 years now, right? So, and I know how this game's played, so I'm an old veteran at this, as you guys are veterans, right? So my point is, we're going to have a specific conversation on just matrons before you slide the money around, right? We're going to make sure that if we cut it down 2 jobs, the 2 are staying cut. He can't July 2nd take the money from some other line that we've appropriated and underfund that line, right? Say he goes, well, I got an open patrolman, but we wanted a patrolman. We didn't want an extra matron. And then he takes the patrolman money and puts it in the matron money. We don't want to see all those. We want a sincere budget process that says, this is what we got. We have the approval of the mayor and city council for that. That's how it's supposed to work.
So what I would tell you at this point is you'll flip the whole budget process on its head. If you do this, it'll take a month to get anything done, and you're going to interrupt the operations of the police department. I'll follow whatever you pass. I got that. But I
that.
really think the storm that this is going to create is we're going to be in here from, almost every meeting or every other meeting, we'll be found, I need money for this transfer, I need money for this.
But you're the
transfer.
only department that does it. You have the absolute world's record for most transfers.
Can I just interject?
And it's all within the legal confines of the law. If you wish to restrict that, go right ahead. We'll be in here a lot, and I do believe it'll affect the delivery of services.
Just to be clear, the main example in my mind in putting this forth to create an ordinance was the fact that within a department, and it wasn't yours, 3 regular positions were created and made permanent benefited positions due to the resolution of a long-standing personnel matter within the department. And we found out about it in the budget. A year later. So now we had these positions we never even heard of that were regular employees of the city getting benefits that there'd never been anything in the budget about paying for ever. And we had budgeted $22,000 for a line that's now going to cost well over $30,000. Now we're a broke city. So, I mean, I'm hearing your pushback on it, but that happened. 2 or 3 people got big raises. You looked from the beginning of the budget, the end of the last year, to this budget, and it was like thousands of dollars difference. And we're not doing our job if we're sitting there doing that. We honor the contracts that you make, and you put it in the budget, and we put the money, and you get the money. But I mean, we got all this other crap going on, because that's what it is, where it's like, oh, these people are too stupid. They're not going to look back to last year and see, oh, this is $8,000 more, this is $10,000 more, and the base has just changed. That's why I filed the order. It's not against a department, it's not against you. It's because we're sitting there looking at a pretend budget. That's all.
Counselor, I don't take any of this personally.
I don't mean it that way.
And I see what you're trying to do, and I'm not trying to increase HPD staffing by an extra 20 officers. I'd love to be able to do that, but that's not in the budget. I'm not trying to do that. All I'm saying is, indirectly, if we take these steps, we're going to turn the police department, how we've been doing the budget, on its head, and I think we're going to be in here all the time, and it's going to slow the whole process down and create much more bureaucracy for us than we need. Can
you give me an example of what you think is going to cause you to be in here all the time if we do this? Well, just
just the first 3 off the top of my head would be reserves, matrons, and part-time clerks. Off the top of my head.
And so what would prompt the problem? Because
we don't have enough money there, and I got to transfer money in to cover it.
So why don't we have enough money in there?
Because people come and go. Sometimes I'm short employees. Sometimes I have more employees. You know, it's a fact of life. Sometimes I cut down on reserves. Sometimes I have more reserves. It depends on when they get hired, when they get trained, and when I can actually employ them.
Yeah, but Chief, don't you agree? To hire in a group of reserves, you've probably got 4, 5, 6 months notice before you ever do that. I mean, we fund a reserve line to whatever you ask. We love reserves. They're great, inexpensive, great workers. You couldn't have enough reserves, right? So we'd give you I think you're allowed 21 reserve positions or something.
Or 23.
Something like that, right? So if you said, Kevin, give me 23 reserve positions, we would fully fund reserves 100%. Just ask for them, you'd get them, right? It's no big deal. But my point is, I just want to make sure if we cut something, it stays cut until we say it shouldn't stay cut. That's my only thing, because, you know, you're a great chief, you're doing a great job, but by the same token, the mayor's got a role and we have a role, and we can't have department heads playing deck chairs with the money all year long. It's got to be, this is a real budget. I really think I'm going to have this, 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 and this. And maybe 6 months later things change. But I can't see how you're going to have all these massive amounts of transfers constantly going on. It doesn't make sense, because that tells me that you didn't put enough in the line item to begin with. Now, when it comes to these other departments, this is really no administrative burden to any of the other departments, in my opinion, because it's really rare to have more than 1, 2, maybe 3 transfers, especially on salary lines, very little. And any of the other departments, you're the only department that has massive amounts of transfers all year in your personnel line. So this would affect you the most. All the other departments, they just don't do what you do.
Right, right. And we do what we do because of the limited budget to get through the year and provide services to the city. Again, we do.
But we give you $11 million in the salary lines. You get to pick wherever you want it. We put it wherever you want it. So how can it be so far off?
Because every item's not fully funded. You know that. Come on. I mean,
we asked for 98 patrolmen. We get 90. Now we have 10 retirees. Now we got 80. So that increases our overtime. Now we don't. Now we have to take that salary money from the patrolmen and move it down to overtime, just to cover the budget, just to cover the streets. That's the difference. We asked for 98. That would reduce our.
Okay, so
our
let's say, John,
cost.
that happens. We give you the transfer. So 6 months, 3 months in, 4 months in, these 5 officers leave. You got to move these 5 salaries to overtime. That happens. So that's 1 transfer.
Yes.
I mean, would you say you have 20 transfers in a year? 30 transfers in a year? I mean, it's a lot. I could go ask the auditor for the exact count. But when I get the budget reports, it's starting from day 1, from July. How could your budget be transferred in July?
Well, through the 20 years you've been on, the police department's been coming back for overtime money, correct?
Correct.
Why?
Well, that's because the mayor underfunds it.
Why didn't we budget in the beginning? Now we're creating the transfers. It wasn't budgeted in the beginning. Now what happens is we get retirees. It takes about a year to get those new people in. So we're always behind the 8 ball. We're always short. So we're always paying overtime. And the overtime budget's cut. So where do we take it from? We have to do transfers just to get through.
I'm with you on that part, in that the mayors, not just Alex, mayors plural, have traditionally underfunded that. And they said, well, I don't want to give them too much, because if I give them too much, they'll spend it. But, I mean, Morris was pretty clear like 2 years ago. He goes, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm giving you X, and you're staying with X, and I'm going to manage you to X. That's what he said 2 years ago. So he's claiming in the fire department and police department, he's going to hold you to X unless it's something really extraordinary. And I think he might have come in with, I think we did one thing in the spring, this past spring for you guys, of maybe 150,000 or something like that. But it's not like there's tons of transfers all year long either for that.
And it's not like, I think the spirit of that order, like you suggested, was the creation of positions. We're not creating positions. Maybe you should make an amendment and put, for the purposes of creating positions, in that. That's the way we kind of.
Well, and I appreciate your feedback in that regard, and it's certainly something we can consider. But the goal of the order isn't simply around creating positions. It's to maintain the integrity of the budget, that if employee is making $70,000 in the prior budget, and then the new budget comes out and the base is 75 and the new salary is 85, that's a problem. And that's a transfer issue also.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
It's
I'm speculating. I'm not stating a fact, but I'm going to speculate that the 5,000 was taken out of a position that wasn't filled. So within the budget year, it all looks fine numerically, but then it's increasing the base by $10,000 in the new budget year, which is as tight as the one was before. And it's just a workaround because certain things didn't happen that the departments wanted. But it's because we don't have any money. I mean, we're sitting here now with $1.2 million, and you guys are basically saying, you know, we're going to be coming in for that on overtime because we didn't get what we budgeted. But I mean, we're going to be tapped, really. I mean, it's only December, you know. So, but I mean, we can't redo the whole budget debate now. But suffice to say, probably at least 2 departments said they were underfunded in overtime, and we have $1.2 million for snow, overtime, etc. That's it, and it's only December. So it can't be just to avoid creating a position because the problem exceeds that. But I take your point on the overtime and open position issue. I'm not sure what we can do with that, but I hear what you're saying on it. Because you've budgeted for 90, and we asked for 98. And say you have 85. That would be the issue. That would prompt that. Sure.
Jim Bartolome from the Local 388 Local Patrolmen's Union. It appears to me, after listening to the conversation, I'm not involved in the budget dealings at the police department, but obviously I pay close attention to all of this stuff. That we would be the most affected group in the city, but yet it seems to me, after listening to what it is you're saying and what you're trying to prevent, that we, as the police department, are your least worry. Even though we make the most transfers, our salaries don't increase through the year. They're very set, and whether, you know, it's no matter which side of the department you're looking at, and we're following all the rules, and we're moving the money legally, as the chief was saying, and that maybe, like Sergeant Hart said, that there could be a way that we could change the wording a little bit to get at what it is that you're really trying to get at, but yet not cripple the department and the chief in moving the small amounts of money that we do move around within our budget, within salaries, to make the department run better. And, you know, I don't know the answer. You know, like I said, I'm not involved in the budget process at the police department, but just sitting and listening to both sides, it would seem as though I understand what it is you're trying to get at, but I understand what it is the chief and the sergeant are trying to explain. And we don't get increases in our salaries throughout the year. That doesn't happen unless it's a contractual increase. Right. You know, I understand the overtime budget is always an issue, no matter what year it is. But I just wanted to put that in there.
What if we said you can't raise an amount at the council?
Well, we can think about that. Yeah. Councilor McGivern.
I think our intentions are on the same page, but as I'm listening, I think some of the budgetary fundamentals are being missed. Chief, when you submitted a budget this year, you did request for 98 salaries, but the mayor only gave you enough money for 90 patrolmen.
That's correct.
So you should only have 90 patrolmen.
Correct.
Okay? And whether it's overtime or whether it's anything else, I think what we're trying to say is we just need to know if this budget isn't going to hold true. Reserves and matrons are per diem, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Okay. And you know, you can have up to 20, 21 reserves. The mayor only gave you enough money for 12, and that's a moving target. It's how
right, because reserves will come and go, and we'll hire them full time. I'll give you an example. I'm going to be back before this budget year is out, asking to take reserve salary side of the house and permission to move it over to the expense side of the house, so I can hire a bunch more reserves to train and equip. But that would be coming before you.
But that we do every other year. You know, that's understandable. You know, and that type of transfer is understandable. You know, it's a moving target. Matrons, as you need them, you hire them, which we understand. But when the mayor underfunds your budget, we can't add to it. But when you add to it by transfers in the middle of the year, it artificially does what we're trying to do, because we, you know, oftentimes disagree with the mayor. You know, we haven't changed the ordinance from 98 because we believe there should be 98 patrolmen, because we've been told why, the necessity for covering the city. But when the money's not there, the affordability, the budget part, is our responsibility with what the mayor gives us, you know.
So, you know, and I would love to be at 98 patrolmen, because if I could get to that, I think you change, our overtime numbers change drastically. But it costs money to hire up to that 98 patrolmen. And I think by city charter, if I'm wrong, I think we're actually authorized 108. But regardless, you know, I would love to have this discussion with you and with the mayor about funding 98 patrolmen.
So let me just make sure I understand. So the major issue that you see that will happen in the remainder of this year is that you're going to need to be transferring money from overtime into the salary line, because you're going to have to be paying the regular guys overtime because you have fewer guys.
That's part of it. And we're looking to hire. So
you're going to
by the time the realities, we probably won't get hired until the end of the year.
So you're going to be actually decreasing. Your budgeted salary line will be lower than what you budgeted. Your overtime demand will be higher. You're going to have to come into us for the overtime money anyway. So the way that, no?
We're hoping to get through the year with what we have.
Like Councilor Jordan said last year, level funding you, stay with
That's it.
That's what we're doing.
Make it work. Okay, so from the macro point of view, you're not going to be coming back to increase your budgeted salary line. Or you're not going to be coming in for a transfer to increase the salary line. So that wouldn't...
Well, it depends how you define the...
Is it right? How you define salary, Councilor Jordan said everything in that personnel side is considered salary.
So if you look at it in the...
Well, we changed a little bit of the language around that, but...
Well, the question is, Madam Chair, are we talking about individual lines like what occurred in the Wisteria-Hearst library budget that you were referencing earlier, where they took this basically extra help or sort of a generic volunteer account, and they turned it in, converted those dollars into 3 full-time positions.
That was one issue.
Or 3 part-time, full-time positions. That's all inside personnel, and they were able to do that just with the mayor's okay. Now, if we're looking at just the whole of the aggregate of personnel services, well, any money coming into that would require our vote already to make the pot bigger, right? The whole expense budget or the whole personnel budget bigger, there's really only 3 sources of funding. You're either taking it from the other, expense to personnel or personnel to expense, or you're taking it from free cash, or you're taking it from stabilization. Those are the only really 3 sources of funding. All of those would require already council approval. But what we're talking about here is it a good idea, yes or no, to allow people to, inside the personnel services line, move from one object code to another, which is, because each of the lines inside the personnel services or expense are called object codes, and they have a descriptor. And to move those monies within the object codes can currently happen without our okay. And the question is, should that, if it meets over either a certain threshold, should it be if it just creates a new job? I mean, we got to think about some of these parameters. We're not looking to create massive administrative burden, but at the same time, I could definitely tell you I would be a situation where something we've reduced by a vote of the council, I don't think that should be increased without a subsequent vote of the city council.
Right, and here is the practical application that I seek. 1, that we couldn't have ended up with 3 jobs in a budget that nobody knew even existed in any department at any time. That is the goal of this. The other goal is that if somebody says, I want a $5,000 raise, and the budget process says no, and then through the next budget process, the person gets the $5,000 raise plus an $8,000 raise, I want it to practically stop that from happening. Beyond that, and that's why I use the language, which I will stand corrected on, to use the proper language, but if there is a salary line in for 90 police officers and you only have 85, the practical application of this would not be seeing that as an increase to that line needing a transfer, as long as the overtime money spent did not exceed the budget line. That's the practical application that I see of these words that I wrote. I'm not looking to have everybody come and say, well, we had to pay Johnny G. I mean, if we want to get the overtime, we ask for it and you give us the list of who got what.
Chief, yeah.
Right? I mean, so right. What I just laid out is the practical application. All we have to do is figure out which words to use right. to make that happen. It's not to make you come running in here for everything. But it is to say, if we budget $5 million for salaries for this, that we don't spend 5.5 without it coming in.
But that, just the reverse of that is, there's no way the effective application of that, though, is you would not be, that would be saying any object code cannot be increased without a subsequent vote of the city council. That would be the effect of that, because you wouldn't be able to increase Correct. Any of those. Right, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Because once you're over it,
right.
then something has to happen.
Right.
But until you are, if you live within your budget, then you're not over your lines.
The other concern is, and it was touched on, is the issue of pay raises. I mean, union contractual stuff that's negotiated and we approve the contract and all that, that's coming in for a vote. That creates an additional, right? That's already approved by the council. But we saw a real situation with the non-union where all of a sudden, you know, I don't want to name names, but a number of these positions, one of them was named, but all of a sudden, oh, you know, I like Joe Blow, so I'm going to give Joe Blow a $14,000 raise. And they just take the money from one line item right up and start giving Joe Blow a 14 grand raise. That's never voted by anybody, right? And then all of a sudden, this line item over here is short.
Exactly.
I could tell you.
Yeah, your department's, that's a non-union is mostly where these are occurring.
And I can tell you, my secretary hasn't had a raise, I think, in 7 years.
Well, give the poor woman a raise.
I'd love to. I would love to, but she's at whatever the top,
Everybody
the top
else
salaries. I can't without your approval. So I'm not going, oh, Jackie, you're doing a great job this week. Here's a $5,000 pay raise. I don't do that. I can't.
But some did.
But there's other departments where they are.
Well,
and that's what we had to undo.
Okay.
And that's
we fixed it, but if we didn't catch it,
right,
all those were going right through.
Right. And so that is what caused this, not your department picking on you guys. That it wasn't even
police.
That wasn't even the causative motive for it. All right. Okay, so the other letter that we have was written by Jeff Burkott. And so I think instead of reading in the whole thing into the record, I'll read in what I think is germane. It says that it is the PSA's belief that the negotiation and agreement signed by the city is binding. In the event that the PSA and city agree to an increase in any member's rate of pay, then that individual shall receive that rate of pay so long as that memorandum of agreement is in effect. It is not disputed that the City Council has the authority to adjust the budget as it sees fit on an annual basis. If the City Council chooses to adjust a salary line once approved and throughout the contract life, there are only two options for the PSA to consider on behalf of its member. First, the PSA and the city could take no action after City Council makes the adjustment. This would result in the individual being compensated at the agreed upon rate until the reduced salary line item is depleted. At that time, the member will have to be let go from service due to lack of funds in which they would be automatically awarded unemployment compensation. The cost of unemployment compensation is borne by the City of Holyoke. The employee will not lose any funds and will return to work on July 1st when the new fiscal year begins. Well, I have a lot to say about that, but anyway. Second, the PSA and the city return to the table to reopen negotiations to address the issues that brought both parties to the table in the first place. It would put both parties at a disadvantage in looking for other ways to properly compensate the member. This could include things like removing duties, adjusting workload, and or scheduled work hours. This, of course, would be a significant negative impact given the makeup of the professionals, department heads, and other supervisors represented within the PSA. So this seems to be making the argument that this agreement is binding, although I don't know about the city council accepting this contract.
Well, I can tell you there's one sentence in here that's absolutely not true, which says, in the event the PSA and the city, and I'm assuming agree, because we don't negotiate contracts, I'm assuming here the city, he's referring to the mayor, agree to an increase in any member's rate of pay, that the individual shall receive that rate of pay so long as the memorandum of agreement is in effect.
Right, I mean,
that's just flat out, that's an incomplete sentence. The second part of that sentence is, if you say Joe Schmo gets $5,000 more, that's subject to appropriation, right? That there's two steps in the analysis. There's the union wants X, or employee wants X. Mayor says, yes, I'll give you X. And now the city council has to say why there's money to fund what those two people just said. The mayor can't say, oh yeah, give everybody a $50,000 raise and we're good to go. You know, nothing to see here. It doesn't work that way. We have a checks and balance system, and the law is pretty clear on that point. All of these things are, and I think Councilor McGivern always reminds us, these things are all subject to appropriation. So that sentence, if once we appropriate it, then I would agree with the statement that absolutely you can't, if you've agreed to give them that, then they're entitled to that. Once we say, yes, here's the money, and then it shall be paid.
But in the first instance where they say, if the memorandum says they're going to get this much and then they run out of money and they're going to lay the person off, I mean, that would be a non-budgeted salary line, which is exactly what I'm talking about in the ordinance. You can't do that.
Right.
You can't say somebody's salary is $50,000 when the budget says it's $40,000, and then lay them off when you run out of money 9 months in. That's the whole reason why we have a budget.
Right. Or they come in and they say, we didn't understand. You know, this is all one big misunderstanding. We thought that, you know, so-and-so could just get this money. The best one is where typically what happens, especially when they're bringing in new employees, is right. Employee X, who worked here for 30 years, was making $50,000 a year. New employee, well, this probably say left 6 months into the year. So there's still a ton of money left in that account, right? Because somebody left. And now what they'll do is they'll say, I'll give you 60 instead of 50. And they run it out, and the only reason there's enough money left over is because maybe the position was empty for 3 months. So then they're coming into us, and then in the next budget we'll see it. Well, last year the pay was 50. Now this year it's 60 because they decided to give so and so a 10,000 raise.
And that happened on at least 2 occasions, and
there was about
at
six,
least
5
2,
or 6 of them,
if not more. Some we fixed, a couple we kind of couldn't fix because we were stuck in a catch-22. But I don't think that's fair, to your earlier point, to the people who've worked here and haven't had a raise in 7 years, for some new kid to walk in the door and negotiate a $10,000 raise. And this is the kind of thing I'm trying to stop with this. I'm not trying to mess up your department. I'm trying to stop the game playing that I think makes it unfair for the people that have been sticking with the city. All right, so.
I'll have to give it some thought and think about wording.
Yeah, but I'm glad at least we had this discussion. We heard your feedback, but we'll come up with the words that are not going to cause that to happen relative to salaries, because I don't see that as the issue.
We're not voting on this tonight. I need to do some homework.
Yeah.
And I want to
Right. We took in a lot of information.
Okay.
We've got a lot of things to consider and how the language
All right.
will
I just want to do some homework, see some financial statement and all that
so
before.
Could I have a motion to table this? So
Yes,
we can,
and just with the expectation maybe for the next time,
yeah,
we'll start having a draft language.
Yes,
and
we'll be taking it up with language next time.
And you'll help us maybe with that too. Oh, did you? Okay.
Oh, do we have it here?
Or is it by email?
Oh, hang on.
Oh, okay.
So I have it on my email then?
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you, Sarah.
You know what? I do remember getting it. Can you just, I remember it being short. Do you mind reading it into the mic? And I'm sorry, because I know you did send that, but I didn't print it out because I'm used to having the printouts.
So the draft language that I had provided was, it was just adding a section to the ordinance for classification and compensation plans.
Yeah.
That says no salary line shall be increased by transfer of funds to an amount greater than that fixed by the city council through its adoption of the municipal budget without an appropriation submitted to and approved by the city council.
Right, that sounds good.
That's,
But
and that doesn't cause the problem that you're worried about. That's why I really didn't see this as problematic.
Right, well,
but anyway, this has been a good
consider everything
discussion,
we heard.
and we have a motion to table, and it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and we'll finish it up next time. Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
This is why we tabled this until I tabled it last time, so we didn't have this in a full city council. What a nightmare.
Right.
Do you recall that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good call.
Good call, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That word 3 wisdom we've come to know and love.
Just saying.
Yep, good stuff.
Okay, motion to take up item 4.
Oh.
Filed by Councilor Bartley that the City Council consider an on-street parking ban for the winter months for certain streets that due to accumulated snowfall become too narrow and impede or prevent emergency vehicles from passing through. We do have language on that, I think.
Yeah, it's right here. Thank you. Oh, this says ancillary structures. Hold on a minute. I got it.
Oh.
This one got mixed in with that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she's still here. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, marijuana.
Oh,
Okay. We'll take that up next.
Which one?
Marijuana.
yeah. That's 4 of them.
Can we smoke at meetings now? I don't know. Is that legal?
Can't smoke in the building.
Why not? It's
We passed an ordinance, can't smoke in the building.
Okay, so
Oh, those
thank
laws
you,
even legal anymore?
thank
We
you
have
for
ashtrays
providing
outside.
this language, Sarah. And what it is giving and the change in the language to be read into the record is notwithstanding the provisions of the section, if a street is determined to be impassable for emergency vehicles due to a snow emergency, the superintendent of the Department of Public Works may order a temporary ban on parking. And this goes to, I think, our last discussion where we wanted to give that authority to the DPW superintendent in an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
Does this meet the intent of the maker?
Well, I think that we need to fire department. Just I don't feel comfortable.
What do you mean you don't feel comfortable? You don't feel comfortable with what?
Well, I just want to make sure that the DPW superintendent will be able to talk to the chief, the fire department before making the final decision, because I mean,
Well, that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? We have to go through a chain of command here and then,
at least the communication will be open. At least, I mean, even let's say, for example, he's gonna be on one side on Temple Street, for example. There's
No, but-
communication.
It's as if they're closing, they're making no parking for the whole street.
Well, I just want to make sure that there's communication. Make sure that we have.
If I may, if I
Sure, Chief.
interrupt, usually during a snowstorm, we're all in mass text. So everybody's, okay, is there a ban, is there not a ban, what's going on? I'm sure that very issue you're talking about, if that comes up, that can be addressed within a minute, if that, because we're all connected for what it's worth.
Councilor McGivern?
But it's not a snowstorm, Chief. That's the problem here. This is where the language is. If it's okay to communicate, can I just ask a quick question to the law department?
Sure, I think we're under suspension anyway, aren't we?
Sarah, currently, if it were to be a bad winter, in multiple storms compounded the snow removal process, meaning that there's a lot of narrow streets. Currently, without any change of language, the DPW can keep the parking ban on indefinitely.
Right, the parking ban, yes.
Citywide. So why is it they can't just do it for certain streets? or is this additional language going to give them the ability to do it for certain streets?
So the parking ban allows parking on one side of the street. So, or reverse would be the other side of the street. So this is saying that in the discretion of the superintendent, he can say there's no parking on either side of the street.
A total ban.
And by making it part of the parking ban, it makes it enforceable because then the police can ticket and tow.
Right. This, and Councilor McGivern, this came up because constituents were concerned because their street was so narrow. No emergency vehicles could get by when their cars were parked on one side.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand those streets too.
Okay.
But for the superintendent to be able to say there's no parking without saying where do all the residents park?
They're gonna have to walk.
From where?
Well, you'd have to go, like, I mean, if you're on Brookline or some of these, you'd have to go to Hillside or Northampton Street, or, I mean,
Hillside's just as narrow, and maybe a few more driveways than Brookline.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good situation. But
No.
the good thing I will say though is Brookline has, most everybody has a driveway on that street. So,
but it's,
most people,
the entire street is 2-3 family homes.
Correct.
The driveways don't accommodate 3 apartments. They accommodate 1, maybe 2 apartments.
It's tight.
Yeah,
no question. Yep.
And there is some parking for the buildings at the corner of Northampton, but not that many in the back.
Right.
Maybe not even a third of what those apartments are.
And I gotta believe though, I know it's a big inconvenience, but what's the inconvenience of a fire truck not being able to get down the street? These are they're lousy situations.
I just thought you'd be able to say for the rest of the winter or until known parking, even though the rest of the city goes back to 2 side, that like Brookline's going to be 1 side for the rest of the winter.
That's no, it says here, if a street is determined to be impassable for emergency vehicles due to a snow emergency, the DPW superintendent may order a temporary ban on parking.
Till they could get the snow out.
Theoretically, once the emergency is over with and it's passable, you go back to normal order, which is one-sided parking. And then if it's no snow issue, then it's 2-sided again.
Right.
I don't have a problem with the emergency, because snow removal on Brookline Avenue should take 1 day.
Right, you'd have to take it out.
We've got the equipment to do it.
Yeah, if they're aggressive, yeah, absolutely.
That should be 1 day. Get the snow off the sidewalk.
That's right.
And then they could actually go back to 2-sided parking if we did it right.
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 But in order for them to clear the snow, you'd have to get all the cars off the street, or it becomes a permanent mess.
And they got to get the big truck, and they
right.
like that big snow, giant snow thingy, whatever they got. Looks like a big snow blower. I mean, there's only so many of those. If there might only be one.
No, I don't have a problem with that. But there also should be the ability to say on certain streets, 1-sided parking until it's better, without saying it for the whole city.
Well, no, that's the current law. The current law is just that.
The current law is kind of like the whole city or nothing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, he's saying certain streets.
So you want to make it but
a little flexibility is all I'm suggesting.
So you're saying even change that piece so that he could order some streets. I'm just saying you might get really chaotic if you start saying, because there's so many streets, right? Go to the website to find out if your street's on the 1-sided or the no-sided or you're on 2-sided.
It's chaotic now, I understand. But that's where I think Dio's point is how do you communicate it to the chief? It's not a snowstorm. It's 5 days later, and we're still doing snow removal.
The only thing I would say on that 5 days later, let's pick whatever particular street, and they're going to declare it a snow emergency. To get it cleared, everybody's got to move their cars and everything. Residents on both sides, or the side that could legally park, need to be notified.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to get accused of kidnapping their cars.
Right.
So,
Right.
So we're going to have to go knock on 100 doors. Please move your car. If we can get a hold of them, run the plates. Maybe we can get them. Maybe we can't. Again, just logistically, there'll be some. At the end of it, I think some unhappy citizens.
I don't think Yeah, I hear you, Chief, on that. I don't think that's quite accurate. When we're going to do a door-to-door campaign, I think what they basically do is they put up little temporary signs, maybe 5 or 6 on the street, each side, saying no parking.
You stick them in the
and that usually gets the message across because people generally adhere to it pretty quick. No parking after 7 a.m. You've seen them all over, and people generally adhere to that.
That's more for street sweeping. I'm talking about citywide.
In the parking ban. This street is.
I'm all for getting the snow clear out of there. You know, no parking on the street, that's not a problem. I just think there's going to be a number of our citizens that are going to get caught up in that. We're going to end up towing their cars, and they're going to be.
Councilor Lopez?
I think it's a great idea. It's a good order. I think I just want to make sure that we have clear communication channels, not only between the fire and the police and the residents, because I mean, who's going to get to the residents? I mean, the councilor's not going to go around walking, right?
You know,
they will do it.
It's like you know, with all due respect, Councilor. You know, if you think you're going to get 100% of anyone, even on a one-way dead-end street, forget it. It's not going to happen. The first time, it's not going to happen. There's going to be some growing pains for sure. So, I agree with you that the communication's got to be improved. But you tell me how do you do it?
Oh, if I may. If we talk to the police chief and the fire department and we have a listing of the street, then the ward council can have a meeting. There's a potential for the street to be closed during the winter. At least they will know when they see a sign on the street, they know that they cannot park on that street completely. But I mean, we need to have a plan. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so the thing that I see up in Ward 5 is in the winter when the snow gets high, on Farnham, because that's an area similar to Belvedere and those, they're stuck in the snowbank. No parking, snow something. That's it. Because otherwise the road's impassable. And I mean, people have common sense. If the snowbanks are 5 feet tall and they can't even see down the street, I think they're gonna get it when the things are in the snowbank. You know, because this is an extreme situation when this is going to happen. It's not going to happen when there's 4 or 5 inches of snow. It's going to happen when we've had, remember when the houses were half covered with snow? I mean, that was extreme. You know, so I don't know. I think we could handle the communication because everybody'd be really paying attention to it. Because, I mean, it would be big. You know, I mean, it's sort of like, are we going to go for perfection or are we going to try to make sure the ambulance can get down the road? I don't know.
Well, would it make sense to put in the ordinance to add language to the effect that the superintendent should take the steps necessary to communicate said
the affected streets?
To the affected streets? Would that help?
Right. There's a mince here if you want. But in fairness, though, we did have our legal advise us that the website, and we do have our city phone thing.
Robocall.
Yeah, they could go through and say the following streets are closed due to. So what would we say? Superintendent will communicate through, how would we say that, Sarah? The
steps necessary to communicate with.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if we had to put in the system or whatever. Oh. All right. So that's your amendment? Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
On favor? Aye. Are we good to go?
Yep. Diosdado, good to go?
I'm good. Let's see how that works. I mean, we will find out soon.
Right, motion approved is amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this order is approved as amended. So,
up,
we're going to go out of order?
Yeah.
6,
number,
7,
motion
8,
to suspend, go out of order,
9.
take up number 6. You want to take them up one at a time,
6
Madam Chair?
through 9 as a package?
Okay, motion to suspend, take up 6, go out of order, take up 6, 7, 8, and 9 as a package.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, so before us, item 6, filed by Councilor Roman, that the City Council establish local ordinances regarding the regulation and taxation of recreational marijuana, including establishing a local tax on marijuana sales of 2%, amount allowed by law. Item 7, filed by Councilor Leahy, order that the Law Department come before the Public Service Subcommittee since the passage of recreational marijuana and how that will affect our ordinances and laws. Also give us an update on the city's regulatory power over the stores that will be selling manufacturing of marijuana and edibles. And even though he requested this to go to service, it was sent to ordinance. Item 8, filed by Councilor Leahy, that the city creates an ordinance on recreational marijuana regarding the taxation of the products that will be manufactured and or sold. Item 9, vacant, order that the sale of recreational marijuana be allowed under the same zoning as medical marijuana. So we have all these items before us, and some of them are similar, and they're all related. And so one of them was to invite the chief down, I think, to get your input on what you thought, and also to hear from Sarah relative to, you know, what our scope would be as a city. So, Chief, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. I think this is going to be new territory for all of us.
Right.
I don't think any of this is coming for at least another year, the way the law is worded.
Oh, is that right?
Really? Right. Oh. So nothing's going to open for another year.
Oh, okay.
That's the reality of it. So you can now, well, in a day or so, you can legally possess an ounce or less out of your house. In your house, you can have, I think it's up to 10 ounces and 6 plants you can grow yourself, or 12 in your house.
How much, just size-wise, what does 10 ounce, like, how much is 10 ounces of marijuana?
Well, it's almost a pound. Well, no, a half of a
Well, I
pound.
mean, size-wise, I'm just kind of curious. Like a.
It's a lot.
You remember the nickel bags you used to buy? Multiply that by. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right.
So
I need my advisor on this.
So, anyways.
Joe's going back to Woodstock.
So.
Okay, guys.
No, I was only 10.
So, quite frankly, though, possessing an ounce or less was decriminalized already years ago. So the day-to-day operations, that doesn't affect a heck of a lot.
From your point of view, for at least in
Right.
general.
So it will be legal to possess ounce or less, or up to 10 ounces in your house. It's illegal to sell it without a retail license, or a retail license, and retail licenses aren't going to be available for probably another year.
That's in 1 ounce, so 10 times of that.
Okay. Oh, so
that's a good amount.
I'm sure people will obtain it, but it is illegal to sell it. The only people that could dispense it are the medical marijuana clinics. But anybody else cannot dispense it. And then we were joking earlier about, was somebody going to light up or something like that. Anywhere tobacco products prohibited, as far as smoking marijuana goes, the same thing would apply to smoking a marijuana cigarette. And of course, the issue is going to be workplace use or not, and employers can certainly set restrictions on it, and the police department has, or prohibitions against the use of marijuana, even though it's legal.
You can still have your prohibitions.
On my officers, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I would hope a nurse wouldn't be at work stoned.
So with this potentially coming to the city, whenever that's going to be, a year out from now, my concerns would be, when you look at what's going on across the country in some places like Colorado or whatever, the shops that have popped up everywhere, in my eyes, and again, I don't mean to be sensational here, but take all the liquor stores in the city of Holyoke and double or triple them, because they pop up like Starbucks.
Correct.
And I don't think that's what the city wants. So,
I don't know, maybe it is.
So how do you...
I made it pretty clear at the debate that there are more, and I believe the governor made it quite clear that there are more marijuana shops in Colorado than there are 7-Eleven, Starbucks, and McDonald's combined in Colorado. And the public voted for this, including the citizens of Holyoke.
Okay. I got it. So
those are probably some of the unintended consequences.
I don't know. People need to know what they're voting for.
So my first concern with in our city, besides the proliferation of a store on every street corner, perhaps it's limited to where a medical marijuana dispensary could be. Perhaps it's limited to an industrial zone area.
Yep.
That way it doesn't interrupt a neighborhood.
I hope not.
You know, my first concern is because this is a large cash business, I'm worried about armed robberies. Yeah. So I think there has to be steps taken for security purposes, be it cameras, be it electronic locks, be the products kept locked up. You know, maybe they have a little bit out during the day, but it's behind, it's behind a shelf. Money's got to be locked up. You'll have to deal with an armored car pickup for money. I don't know if you're going to have a police detail there.
Where do you bring the money, though? To somebody's basement? It is still illegal in the United States to put any of this currency in a federally chartered bank. That is illegal.
So I can't answer that.
So apparently this is going to be in somebody's basement.
So you're going to have large caches of money. You're going to have large caches of money, which is going to be attractive for somebody looking to make a buck illegally by robbing them. You're also going to have large caches of product. So the security has to be pretty tight. Mm-hmm. But again, that's down the road. I can't sit there and say, this is going to be easy, we can fix this. We can't. It's coming. It's just a matter to what degree.
But we could control it.
Again, I would defer to the city attorney and the makers of the laws for that. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned about no one under 21 on the premises, mm-hmm. No loitering, no ingestion of the product on the premise. Now, I may be overstepping on this, and I probably am, but I would be concerned about smoke bars popping up. Maybe that's the thing to come, maybe it's not. Like they have over, I guess, in Amsterdam or wherever else, right? So that's a possibility.
They have them in Colorado.
Right. So, I would be concerned about those type of things. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you're worried about the edibles getting in the hands of children.
I know.
So,
looks like candy too.
Whatever the facade on the front of the business, I don't think there should be a great deal of advertisement going out that promotes it. Any more than there's restrictions on smoking, advertising, something similar to that. I would worry, depending on the front of the building, can my officers see in, or is it like a liquor store or some liquor stores plastered with flyers across the front? You can't even see what's going on inside. Now, the 2% tax, I hope the state changes that and we can tax that more.
Make it 10%. Why not?
Well, I guess there's a sliding scale, and there's a worry if you overtax it, you still drive people to the black market, the illegal market. But somebody's going to have to police this.
What's the tax on tobacco?
Oh, it's huge.
It's enormous. It's probably the cost of the product, absent tax, would probably be about $2 a pack. I walked through Walmart the other day. I don't smoke, but I almost fell over when I saw the price was over $10 a pack for a pack of cigarettes. That's got to be at least 800% tax on that. I mean, those things don't cost a lot to produce. And I remember as a younger person, pre the big war against tobacco, and cigarettes were like $1, $2 a pack. I mean, you could buy a carton for $10, And even with inflation, maybe that'd be 20. Now it's $100, $200 a carton. It's just incredible to me. So why isn't marijuana being taxed at that level?
The 2% is only the local option. The state is taxing it at a higher rate for their purposes.
Yeah, but I think they're only taxing it at 3.75%.
Yeah,
so I'm hoping that's all subject to change.
Tax what? It's in a cash business. I'm sure everyone's going to be a good trustees of the marijuana trustee tax, and they're all going to fully report all the marijuana that they're selling.
So my concern is who's going to police it? I don't have extra resources.
The DOR is going to police it. That's who polices the meals tax, withholding tax, sales tax today. These are trustee taxes. They also police the excise taxes for cigarettes. I mean, But they get that all from the retailers, and they, you know, they have the little stamps on all the cigarettes and stuff. All that has to be policed. Who's going to police all these things? I'll be very intrigued to see how that all plays out. That'll be very interesting.
So I don't have all the answers for you.
Of course not.
It's coming. I am concerned about the security implications. I'm worried about the safety of our citizens. Quite frankly, I'm worried about some thug deciding he's going to get rich, taking off one of these places with a gun. I worry about that.
Right.
So I think security protocols have to be built in.
Do you need a license to operate one?
I would think so. Well, I'll turn the mic over.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Your turn, Sarah.
Okay. I can premise this with, so the law that was passed by the voters, it's my understanding that the state legislature is going to take another look at it. They're going to be making some changes.
That was me.
Oh, that was you.
I'm in my shoe and I'm over my
Sorry. So there are going to be some changes to the law, and also, you know, there's going to be some regulations. Right now, it's everybody, different municipalities are they're taking a look at it, but they're also being cautious because things are going to change. Okay. So essentially, the law sets up a cannabis control commission of 3 individuals, and this commission is
in each city.
Nope, this is the statewide commission. They're going to have an advisory board of 15 individuals who are going to help to make rules and regulations. But the Cannabis Control Commission is going to offer the general supervision and sole regulatory authority over the retail establishments, the retail, the growing and cultivation and testing facilities. So there's not going to be any licenses on the local level. The way, and of course, this is all subject to change.
Right.
This is what it says now.
Yeah.
So essentially, if someone submits an application with the CCC, it's at that point the municipality has 90 days after notice to essentially respond back to them to say, yes, it's compliant with our local laws or our local ordinances. The extent to which we can regulate on a local level is going to be, I think it's going to be a little different than the medical marijuana facilities, only because right now the law only gives 90 days. And we can only institute reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions that are not...
Can we outright ban them?
Yes, to an extent. So right now, and this is what the law says now, it says that we can limit the number of establishments. With limiting the number, we are going to prohibit the operation of 1 or more types of establishments, limit the number to fewer than 20% of the number of licenses issued for alcohol beverages in the city, so alcohol licenses, or limit the number of any type of marijuana establishment to fewer than the number of medical marijuana treatment centers registered to engage in the same activity in the town. Then we need, it says a vote of the voters, which is one of the hiccups in the law because you can't really send an ordinance to the vote of the voters. So I'm hoping that the state legislature is going to be able to adjust that to say how it needs to go to the voters.
So if we theoretically have 1 medical marijuana facility, that means we can limit recreational marijuana facilities to 1.
Right. And again, the law is not clear because it says the number of registered facilities, but I've also seen some interpretations that are talking about the zones, where if you set up a zone that allows medical marijuana facilities, you can't prohibit retail establishment or recreational marijuana retail establishments in that area as well. So right now it's all really up in the air.
So right now we allow in an IG zone.
Right.
We allow medical.
Right. But we had to allow it.
Right.
We could not prohibit it.
You cannot prohibit it. And that's where we're just looking for some additional guidance.
So what do you advise, if we wanted to go the most restrictive, theoretically, the Kevin Jourdain view of the world, all right, if I were 15 of us, which is not to say, because I understand there is a more permissive nature on this body than the Kevin Jourdain view of the world. I sort of take a Vatican view of these things, as you know. My question is, what would be the most restrictive? I could do only an IG zone, or I could limit it right to 1.
Well, it would have to go to the voters somehow, because we haven't determined that process yet, but it would have to be a referendum question.
Even to limit it to the, I thought if it was only if it was an amount less than the medical.
It says to limit the number of marijuana establishments, except that a city or town may adopt an ordinance by a vote of the voters, if the ordinance or bylaw prohibits the operation of one or more types, limits the number to fewer than 20% of the number of licenses issued within the city or town for retail sale of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on the premises where sold. And presumably we have a lot of liquor stores and different package stores in the city, so 20% would be a high number.
Okay, but 20. So 1/5 of you'd be surprised. So 1/5 of the bar licenses in town.
Mm-hmm. That's, we could say.
Well, it says not to be drunk on premises, so it would be the package stores.
Oh, package stores too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we could say just an IG.
But we could do just IG only.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you again, we'd have to look at it in terms of the.
Why don't you give us the maximum, most restrictive view, which doesn't seem to be too restrictive, by the way.
It would have to go. It'd have to go to the voters.
Any restriction.
Well, any restriction, any limit that hits one of these specifications would have to go to the voters.
But we could limit the zoning.
Yes, we could, but we'd have to look at the impact, and that's where it's tricky because we're thinking in terms of where it's going to be located, but they want us to look into terms of how many retail stuff. I mean, you want to have. You could have like hundreds in a IG zone.
You could have 15 of them in one building.
Exactly. You know, so it's at this point it's still early on, and I guarantee you there are going to be some amendments. There are a lot of things. I'm part of a listserv for municipal lawyers, and there have been a lot of issues raised. A lot of cities and towns don't quite know how to go about this, and we're really looking for some guidance.
I know,
do we realize there's 400 in Denver? 400. Just imagine that.
But a lot of towns don't want them at all. And their towns voted against it. I mean, even though it prevailed in the state, there's many communities that wholeheartedly voted against it.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is, you know, I don't think you're going to see them showing up in Long Meadow in these nice communities because they're very, I mean, they don't even let funeral homes go into Long Meadow. I mean, they have the most restrictive rules against businesses. I've seen that where like Long Meadow voted down, you know, or had restrictions against even funeral homes. And so my point is these places are going to like to pop into shopping centers, you know, like I could see the old shop right up at Kmart Plaza become, you know, Marijuana Global. And I'm just wondering, how do we prevent that from popping up everywhere? So we need an action plan ASAP on this.
I think at this point we have to wait for them to clarify the law, and especially the parts that seem a little contradictory and vague, and then look at the number. I think that would be the most effective way, is to put a cap on a number as opposed to the zone, because if you allow it in a particular zone, you're not necessarily, it has to be a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction, and it can't be unduly burdensome. So. And we'd have to look at the effect.
Can you draft something? Because I'd like to have something on the books that we could always amend later if the legislature changes the law, unless they're going to do this quickly.
Well, right now, so the process is that no retail establishments can open until they can request an application October of 2017. So at this point, it's, you know, a little less than a year, but we still have till October of 2017 before they can even pull the first application from the CCC. The CCC is supposed to be have their regulations done by September of 2018. I did look for updates just before this meeting, and it's my understanding that the state legislature is going to take this up, but it's not going to be until January or until early next year. A couple other things that I just wanted to point out. So the tax, the 2% is the local option. It is I think it's 3.75 is the state, which is possibly going to be changing. There's no explanation of how we adopt the tax. Again, usually statutes give you language. They say that this specific language has to be adopted, or they give you a manner. That's going to need to be clarified.
And what's the mechanism to report the 2% against? How is the excise tax on marijuana reported?
Exactly. I mean, that's something.
2% of what?
Yeah, the Department of Revenue is going to have to make.
That's going to be unbelievable.
They're going to have to make regulations on that, and I mean, I've heard that the state might increase the tax. So.
Sounds good to me.
And then the other issue that I did come across was about the consumption on the premises. There is language that says that this has to go to the voters. It says that a city or town can put a question on the ballot to as to whether or not marijuana products can be consumed on the premises where sold. The language in the law is a little iffy. It doesn't right now say, essentially it's not clear that if we don't put this on the ballot, does that automatically mean that you can consume on premises, or does it require it to be on the ballot in order to consume?
So you have a pot smoking bar instead of an alcohol bar.
Correct.
Or maybe you could be both, a pot and alcohol bar.
And that's something, I mean, the state's going to have to regulate whether or not they would issue alcohol license and, I guess, marijuana retail licenses together.
Council Roman?
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate it. You can sit down. I'm not going to bug you with any questions, but I just wanted to make a few comments with the committee. I agree. Unlike the Vatican, I do happen to agree with the sentiments of this body, and I actually came tonight to urge this committee to actually table my specific order pending the direction from the state legislature. I would actually like to see, and again, we've had this conversation, and I've shared this openly. My constituents know if we limit it specifically to IG zones. I happen to live in an abutting ward that is heavily IG, and that's where a lot of our medicinal marijuana dispensaries are looking into. Even within that, we have a proposed applicant now looking at an IG zone that's dead in the center of a heavily trafficked area in between two schools. So I would like to just wait and pause and see on this. I happen to be in the mindset and happen to agree with some of my colleagues that it should be in hand with a medicinal marijuana dispensary, so that way they're tied into one. But I also think that we as a city need to put out and not just get one specific and put out and get proposals to meet with the chief. What I like about the medicinal side on the two applicants that I've seen, first the one that we had publicly and the other one who's interested in the wings, is that they both have to come before and speak to the local police department and get that letter of review. I happen to be in that mindset. I agree with the fact that we need to tax it at a higher level. I just put the 2% in because that's by law. And yes, this was written by a pro-recreational marijuana organization, so of course they're going to write it to the perfection utopian, and I am in the mindset of it being legalized, but there needs to be some clear changes, and I also researched some of those quirks in the language. Specifically for me, I believe cities and towns should be able to regulate it. I still think it should happen in Holyoke. I think we need to have it, but at a more regulated and fair method, and I think it should go hand in hand with the medicinal. For me, it just makes the most sense. The signage is going to be concise. We have language already existing, so as a proponent of recreational marijuana, I happen to agree with those sentiments and agreeing that we need to limit that. And then the only other thing is, with all due respect to the chief, I love him, I appreciate him. I do not think it's going to be that much of a nightmare. I actually think that this will help. The fact, as I've showed my colleagues, 1 ounce is a lot to carry for an individual to have. I actually think it'll, for me, a lot of our individuals and constituents use. There's no need for them to go to a store if they can properly have their own in their home. Or the growing aspect in itself, one plant, for example, can give you up to 5 ounces per its lifetime. So literally, if you can have up to 6, there's no need for you to go to a store or purchase. If you can have in that lifetime cycle and you get seeds to keep growing, I think you're going to see a lot more individuals in that mindset locally. I know that's what I intend on doing. I'm not going to go spend my money in a store if I can just grow it myself and legal it, but that's also something that we need to think of as a council, because those growing tools, we have to think about that from this ordinance committee. I throw that out there as well. The growing mechanisms, you need heating lamps, you need some safety stuff, so I think that we need to also explore that as a body, because I happen to have, and again, apartment owners can't have it in there. So if you're on housing authority, low-income units, you're not allowed to grow. But even homeowners, making sure that we have the proper safety mechanisms, because those heat lamps, say you leave home, you leave that on, it could be a fire hazard. So I would also like us to explore from the safety side, just because I choose to grow in a home that I purchase, is it going to be a safety concern or hazard? So I think we need to explore some of that language as well. But I'm here tonight to say I think we should table these items to further let the legislature explore. And as a proponent, looking at the Vatican view or the SoCal, and I'm not in the Colorado model. I think Washington State is a good model to look at, and that they regulate it. It is not on every corner as abundantly as Colorado, and I think a lot of states who have legalized compare Colorado sometimes to some of the things in Washington where it's not as free on every corner like a Starbucks. But I do think there needs to be some more thought, and I think that we as a body need to regulate and tie them hand in hand with the medicinal marijuana dispensaries.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern?
I think, sir, if I just ask a couple of questions, I think the current concern is the orders deal with something that I agree most of it, but we can certainly start, is a wait-and-see game, but consumption is not a wait-and-see game, because consumption begins immediately. Now, consumption of smoking marijuana, I would hope the secondhand rules kick in terms of in a public place. You cannot smoke marijuana if you can't smoke a cigarette. I would hope it goes hand in hand. But in a public place, Kevin brings in a stack of brownies at the next meeting and starts passing them out. They're legal. You know, I mean, do we have to, you know, address that?
I like brownies. I like brownies too.
But the thing is, you're not going to even know it's in there.
Yeah. Can we consume? I don't know. Is it legal for me to consume marijuana?
I'm thinking more like.
So in the, and I'll let
what I'm really thinking about is like at a place that serves alcohol, they cannot sell marijuana, but can a patron bring in an edible marijuana product?
How are they going to know?
When they start passing them around, and
well, I can say so. I mean, the law does specify that local governments can prohibit or otherwise regulate the possession or consumption, and it doesn't specify smoking or not smoking. It just says consumption of marijuana or marijuana accessories within a building owned by the.
We got to get those laws all on the books ASAP, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay. I'll say. Councilor Lopez.
Food for thought, Councilor Lopez.
I know.
Sarah,
Brownies for thought.
what about hours of operation now? Are we going to have 24 hours, drive-through, all that stuff?
All that. So again, the CCC is going to be issuing the licenses, and I know all the discussion about the safety concerns. My understanding of reading the law now is that the CCC is going to say what the safety protocol is going to be. But again, there's some area where they could defer to local governments to make regulations. That would be a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction to say that your hours of operation, you could prohibit 24-hour shops. But again, we have to wait and see what the state does, because they're going to, we can't, so essentially you can create any ordinance. It's a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction unless it's regulated in that fashion by the state. So.
But honestly though, I think it's really a catch-22, because how can you regulate a cash business that's a violation of federal law? I mean, just on its face, it's such a conflict.
Oh, and I think the Department of Revenue is probably asking the same question.
I'm thinking. Well, thank you for the work that you've done on this so far, and I mean, we know, there's a lot to do. Oh, I know. We're not done, but
yeah.
I mean, we're not going to finish it tonight either.
Oh, no,
Councilor
right,
Jourdain.
right. Yeah, just a couple more.
Yeah.
Who appoints the Cannabis Commission under the law? I'm intrigued by that. Is that the governor or?
No, it's the Department of the State Treasurer.
State Treasurer? That's interesting. When was the last time the State Treasurer appointed anybody other than maybe one member of PERAC? I mean, that's an interesting process. Okay, so the state governor is going. The state treasurer is going to be appointing the members of the Cannabis Commission. So now turning to my colleague, so obviously you know my worldview of this, and you have a different worldview, and I respect that. That's the beauty of what makes us all different. I'm at 0 facilities. Don't think we can do that. We might be able to do one. Like, if we did, I'm okay with one medical marijuana facility, right? People voted for that. I voted for that ordinance, and we said we didn't really limit the number. We limited it to IG zone. In the Nelson proponent, what you hear on the street type of view, how many of these sales places? Is it going to be 5 in Holyoke? Is it going to be 3 in Holyoke? Is it going to be 20? How do you see this playing out in your opinion? And I'd love, and then where do we strike whatever the most reasonable limitations that we can put that all of us agree on, and then move forward with that?
I agree. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairwoman, I agree. I happen to think that one medicinal facility is sufficient. I think I'm in the mindset of actually the numbers being a smaller size. We're a city of only 40,000 constituents. I don't think you need any more, and I'm being liberal, more than 2 in this city.
So
that's just
reasonable.
me. That seems reasonable, more than 2. So one tied into the medicinal marijuana facility, and then one on its own. But again, heavily, I think those other restrictions need to change. But that's just my.
So one recreational, one medicinal.
Yes. That, and the second medicinal one should be tied in. If it is, if not just one together, then the medicinal, in my opinion, again, I'm Nelson, my personal view, that medicinal dispensary that's going to be in an IG zone anyway should be tied in with the recreational component, and then an additional just recreational on its own.
I could live with that, you know.
Councilor McGivern?
Just a follow-up question. Sarah, can you, maybe not this evening, but give us an answer as to, can we regulate free enterprise? The way we regulate licenses for bars, for liquor, consumption is through a state allowing each community, according to the size of the population, X amount of licenses. Package stores, same thing. There's got to be some free enterprise concerns here where, we can't dictate who's going to be the only person to make a profit within the city of Holyoke without free enterprise being part of it.
No, and I agree, and the ABCC does set the limits, and in this legislation now, the CCC does not set it. It's the local, and I can see it changing. I can see, the legislature taking a look at that and saying, no, we want the Cannabis Control Commission to be establishing the limits of how many per city or town.
I like the alcohol.
The first time I was sued as a city councilor, the city tried to limit the amount of, and this goes back to Woodstock days, I think, David, try to limit the amount of self-serve gas stations. There was only 2 in the city of Holyoke. And that was a free enterprise argument, and we lost that battle before we even went to court. And we just deleted the ordinance. But it's issues that I think we have to be aware of.
Well, it's got to be reasonably related, right, to a state interest. And
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, I just want, sort of on topic here, I just want to point out that we'll have I'll file the order for next Tuesday, and we'll have the state delegation in per our, it's Rule 32, but it might be 32A. And we'll have a state delegation in here on the 9th of January. Councilor McGivern, I didn't hear from you, but we have a quorum that day for the 9th of January at 6:30. That's one thing. So you can ask Don and Aaron whatever you want to ask them, and they're usually pretty good about that. And the other thing is, I'd like to coin a phrase if I could, Madam Chair. So, I'm glad we're on TV, and I'm glad I'm on microphone because no one can steal my thunder because it's all on tape. So the CCC, which everybody who's ever read history is a Civilian Conservation Corps, this Cannabis Control Commission, in my estimation, if I just coin the phrase, should be known as the potheads. Is that okay? Is that can we agree with that one?
You now hold the patent on that.
I want to be the first one. Thank you.
Councilor Roman.
Where I agree with my colleagues, and I think that that's something that we could lobby our state legislature. Maybe we should file an order urging our state delegation to amend the language to include that same provision where based on your city's population size, you will then have a certain amount. So we're not limiting exactly what my colleague is saying, the free enterprise model, but it's based, because the original law and campaign was the taxation and regulation of marijuana like alcohol. So for me, they should look the same. So they're treated fairly, but I agree with you. It should be the same.
I mean, I think we should.
But if you can't make, well, I guess you can make your own alcohol if you want to.
Yeah. I think, if we have medical marijuana, I think these two should be comparable rules to the extent I think the legislature should consider following comparable rules on both of these. And we take it from there. Maybe we should, once we get to a point of we have a proposal, maybe we should consider giving Aaron and Don our suggestions, Because we obviously want as much local control as possible, because the reality is these facilities are not going to be located in the South Hadleys and Wilbraham, very limited to non-existent. These communities you will not see these type of facilities in you know, the Grand Suburbia. You will see these all over Holyoke, all over Springfield, all over Chicopee, you know. I hope they get a couple up in Westfield. That's what I'm hoping for, because the senator up there feels all these things should be in Holyoke. And I've already stated to the senator that I hope a couple of these things come to Westfield. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, I think we've exhausted this for the evening, given what we don't know.
Smoke 'em if you got
'em. Poke 'em if you got 'em.
But to the point made on consumption,
the needle too.
We have, I mean, none of our orders really pertain to the consumption, so I would encourage somebody to file an order in that regard, because that actually seems like the thing we should act on first, right? Right, but I mean, right now we don't really even have anything in front of us on that, unless, I don't think we could we stretch, well, establish local ordinances regarding the regulation of recreational marijuana.
There you go.
That's broad enough.
I think Councilor Ullman hit the nail on the head.
So
there you go.
Yeah, and yeah, I think a couple of them are, and Councilor Leahy create an ordinance. So I think we're good there. So if Sarah, you could give us something back for our next meeting on the consumption issue, that would be great. All right.
So motion to table 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. That was great discussion. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Aye, councilors.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Chief. Motion to go back to regular order. Take item, unless you want to do something else.
Actually, item 5, we are waiting for feedback from the planning board, which we have not received at this time.
So I'll leave it on the table.
But I am advised by legal that the clock is ticking.
Oh.
So a motion to take number 5.
Our public hearing.
Motion to take number 5 at the table, just so the public knows what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 5 was filed by me, that Councilor Vacan, that the sign ordinance for BH and BG be reviewed and revised to increase the maximum surface area permitted for each sign as of right from 40 to 75 feet for businesses with less than 25,000 square feet of floor area, and from 80 to 150 feet by special permit. Also in the BH and BG zones for businesses with 25,000 or more feet of floor space, maximum surface area permitted for each sign as of right is 200 square feet and up to 400 square feet by special permit. So we closed our public hearing on this matter. The planning board kept it open to receive some information from Mr. Burkott, and we are awaiting their recommendation, but our clock is ticking for action by the city council. I think we're already 30 days in. Okay, so a little less than a month in.
We have what, 90 days?
We have 90 days, and we can act if the planning board doesn't recommend. I just do want to note.
But you can't act until their period is up. They have 45 days once. Unless they recommend.
Their public hearing is open.
My understanding of the regulations is that the council needs to either receive the recommendation of the plan, so the planning board has to provide a recommendation or close their public hearing and then not provide a recommendation. Their public hearing is still open. So your 90 days are ticking, but their public hearing is still open. And I know.
They don't close their public hearing, you can't act.
Right.
Do they?
Because you wouldn't have any, you can't act until you either have a recommendation of the planning board or within 21 days after the close of their public hearing.
They're trying to explain. They have less time to make a recommendation.
Right. Right.
Make our decision. But we have to give them the time once they close their public hearing to make the recommendation.
And that's if it's going to be approved. I mean, the council you could vote to say, you could vote no. You could vote that you're not making the ordinance.
Without their recommendation.
Right, but in order to adopt an ordinance to change the zoning laws, you either have to have the recommendation or receive nothing from the planning board 21 days after the close of their public hearing.
So, but that.
Close their public hearing,
I know.
21 days goes into our 91st day.
I agree.
But that creates a situation where an appointed board can effectively block an elected council from.
Exactly.
The purpose of that was it's for review of the planning board. So it's just it's chapter 40A. It's just the regulations.
Reconsider our action opening. I don't know if you can.
I don't think you can.
So.
I honestly, at this point, my advice would be to send a communication or I can reach out to the planning board to say they need to at least say action. Whether or not they're going to do something and report. Yeah.
Well, right. And I mean, they can recommend that we don't do it if they don't want us to. But I mean, in fairness, they were waiting for some technical information from Jeff Burkott, who works next to him every day. And that was 3 weeks ago. So, and I just also want to note, at the last public hearing, the planning board said that the mall was all set with their signage issues. But I have a letter from December of 2015, which was saying that we have limitations on our ordinance on signage allowed in the BH district. And I'm not aware that we changed our signage ordinance in the last year. Am I forgetting something that anybody else remembers?
Nothing's coming to mind.
I don't know how we could have fixed it for the mall if we didn't change our ordinance. Because that's what this is to do.
Well, Councilor Soto filed an order that we passed relative to the Holyoke Mall for stores of a certain size. Yeah. We allowed them to put increased signage without coming into without requesting a special permit for us. So there was a Soto order that.
Was it just for the mall or just for a zone?
I want to say it was for buildings of a certain square footage. Yes. Okay. So we did pass that.
It was square footage and height, but that was more than a year ago. That was a.
Okay, it was maybe more than a year ago. Fine. I don't remember the timing.
Attorney Hero?
It's additional information. It's just history.
Can you?
I'm sorry. The committee can't receive additional information because the public hearing is closed.
Well, no. This isn't additional information. This is, did we already change the ordinance?
Right.
This isn't additional information. This is does our current law already give this signage size to those people?
Okay. I would just caution that.
Right, but that's all I'm looking to see, because it was stated at the public hearing that the mall was already all set and all taken care of. That would have required an ordinance change. So I'm just looking, there must be an ordinance change I missed, because I've been sitting here for a year. Do you?
I don't recall one.
All right, so anyway, that's why this ordinance is here. All right, so anyway, so this, if you could ask them for their recommendation relative to the signs and the methadone Suboxone, that would be great. Thanks a lot, Sarah. So motion to table, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
On favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion to take number 10 off the table.
Second.
Item 10 was filed by Councilor Jourdain. Ordered that the mayor come before a committee of the city council to discuss his plan to move municipal offices. He should discuss this plan with us prior to implementing it. Now, this order I put on because of the request around the rules and the city council space.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Do we want to change the ordinance to take this authority back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then there you have it.
I mean, I think I co-sponsor this with you, Kevin, so I'm on board with this one.
Yep. So I think that's where this is going with to do just that.
I think I heard the word two, Councilor, kind of chime in agreement too.
So right? We can have the mayor come in, but we could amend this to also say, create an amend the ordinance to just put this back to.
Amend the ordinance now, put in legal form.
As it reads now, I believe we, up until, say, 2 years ago, it always read the city council sets the offices. Then I believe we amended it to say the mayor has all the offices except for the council and council chambers, I believe is what they're modified. Yeah, I believe that's what current law says. Correct. Yeah. So just give us a legal form for the next meeting.
So that was a motion and that was a second?
Yeah, yes,
or do we just want to adopt it and send it up to city council after it's put in a legal form? Do we need to have it come back to committee?
Why? Why do I have to come back to committee? This is not complicated, is it?
No.
Is this complicated language?
No, that was the way the law was written for 100 years.
Okay, then there you go.
We just changed it recently.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Joe would like to be heard.
Councilor McGivern?
We changed the charter when we changed the city messenger's position and created our assistant and actually undid. It was the charter that gave the city messenger the power over City Hall itself.
No, it's in the ordinance, Joe. This is no charter change.
We eliminated the position which had the authority over City Hall was the city messenger. Guarantee it. I'm not saying ordinances didn't have language pertaining to the chambers and ordinances that have language pertaining to what we can and can't do, but it was the charter that gave the city messenger, not the mayor, the power over City Hall, and most mayors ignored that.
Okay, we have an ordinance though that says it. That gives the city council, she could read you the section, what is it?
Over the chambers.
2- whatever.
If you could read it into
just
the
cite the ordinance section.
For the people that might be still watching.
It's section 2-566, care and charge of City Hall building.
Yeah.
The mayor shall have general care and charge of the City Hall building, its room and grounds. The mayor or his or her staff shall prepare and arrange said rooms for their appropriate purposes and shall keep the same clean, warmed, properly lighted, and in good order and condition. Notwithstanding any other language in this section, the president of the City Council or the president's designee shall be in charge of the scheduling of use of the City Council chambers and use of the offices used for conducting of City Council business.
Right. I mean, when we did the rewrite, all that used to say City Council and not mayor. So then in the ordinance change, reserved, because I didn't want anybody to get cute and say, oh, yeah, I know that beautiful room 11 that says City Council on it. We're going to put, I don't know, make it a coat room for the mayor, and we're going to move the City Council up into the auditorium or something crazy. So I said, this in our offices, we still retain authority.
And I agree with that.
Okay, so we're just saying to change it back to all council.
Well, this is what I'm trying to make a point is, I'm not against changing it back, but the way it worked was the charter, the custodians, the maintenance of this building came under the city, his budget had custodians.
Yes.
Therefore, he ruled what happened in this building.
You're absolutely right.
And that's, how are we going to rule what happens in this building as a legislative body? That's all I'm asking. A little more thought.
Well, what we're saying is he'll have to come in with his grand plan, which I believe he's got.
The moving of an office.
Yeah.
But that language is a lot more than the moving of an office. That's maintenance and operation and.
Well, but we have the DPW. That ordinance has been on the books for decades. So my point is, it was working just great up until 2 years ago when we.
But we had a budget with the messenger who we appointed. We didn't,
No, nothing's changed budget-wise.
The messenger had a budget with custodians in it. The custodians are no longer in our budget. The custodians are in the DPW budget.
Right. Well, if they want the trash picked up, I'm not down here. If they want the trash picked up, then the mayor will put money for trash.
I'm just saying, don't bring it all back.
We just want to make sure the rewrite of
the use of the space.
The simplest way is to just put it back to city council. Says I'm open to the law department with suggestions, but is just to have us be in charge of who's in what offices.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
But I think we have to separate the maintenance and responsibilities of the building itself.
All right. Do you want to say the DPW superintendent then is the maintenance of the building? I mean, that's who's doing the maintenance. He oversees the custodians are part of the DPW now. That's it. That's true.
So
we assign the offices.
Right, and I think the thing is, we don't want to come in a month and find out the clerk's office is downstairs, the other office is over here, and
yeah.
I can put language together that says that the council assigns the offices. As for the care and custody of the building, and I mean, that's like, you know, is the building locked? That maybe should be the
DPW superintendent
or the mayor.
The mayor, because he's the CEO.
And also, you know, it says keeping offices well lit, and you know, unfortunately we have had some union issues complaining about working conditions, and I think it would be, at least the mayor could address those directly through the maintenance staff.
I just want to be careful when I say the care, okay, I'm with that, but the custody of the building.
The maintenance versus the
I like that portion of it, that the city council oversees the you know, that sort of piece of it. I don't want them to say, well, I've decided, yeah, you can say what office it is, but I'm locking these doors. And so you know, have a good one, you know. You gotta be careful. But yeah, I mean, who's the janitors and who does all this type of stuff and secures the building and makes sure it's heated? But he can have all that.
The other thing too is this building does have a substantial amount of money in it. So as for like making sure there's safes, making sure there's proper locks and storage and everything.
Okay. Right. So
security.
It would be fair then to say one function is maintenance and the other is use.
Yeah. Right. He can have control of the maintenance. We'll control the use.
So is this reasonable for us to adopt it, and you could have it in legal form for city council, or do you think it should come back to us?
I think it should come back to you, honestly. Or
because it's a little more
to
it than it seemed.
It can wait 2 more weeks.
Motion to table.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll just say table for legal language.
Yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Number 11.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Take item 11 off the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This order was filed by Councilor Bartley, ordered that the City Council consider revising its ordinances relative to the funds provided to the Mayor's office in lieu of providing a vehicle.
So under discussion, I think it's $600 a month. Is that where it is right now, Madam Chair?
I believe so.
Okay. So I simply filed it for discussion. If the body wants to throw out a number, that's fine too. I don't, just for budgetary reasons.
Personally, I voted for the lowest number that was proposed originally.
Which was what, Madam Chair?
I believe it was 300.
Yeah, I will make a motion that we do.
I'll second it for discussion.
How about
Councilor Jourdain?
Okay, one thought is
You're all set?
we should have a review. I believe most of the employees, and thinking about this some more, I think everybody's on the standard federal rate. I believe there's a travel policy, and if you submit your thing, you get 50-something cents a mile or whatever that is. We should probably just put the mayor on the same policy as all the other employees.
The city's on the federal rate?
Yeah. Yeah, and the travel policy, I believe on the rewrite that we did 10 or 15 years ago, that it's the standard federal IRS rate, and
some are on a flat stipend.
Some are on a flat stipend that got carved out, but the unless you got one of those special deals, basically you're on the IRS rate. Like for example, when I had one trip, I went with Kara to Boston we had 4 home rule petitions. So albeit it took them a year to pay me, I submitted the sheet and I got 50 cents or whatever it was a mile. So, and they paid my parking in Boston.
Nice.
Yeah. So I got, whatever it was, 100. It was like $100.
A per diem lunch maybe, by the way?
No free lunch, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, did you? Nice. So anyways, but that seems to be also maybe in considering is, so if he's really driving a lot, maybe we give him that. Maybe it turns out better for him. Maybe if he's not driving a lot, then he would only get whatever. So he's really getting paid like everybody else I'm starting to wonder, I don't think anybody has a stipend that's as big as his. So that seemed a little unfair that he's got the largest stipend of them all. And so maybe in our rush to give the mayor something, I think we might have went overboard. And I think if you give that some more thought, we probably could find something a little fairer.
Councilor Bresnahan?
Thank you. I'm just kind of curious, who is using the car outside? Because I noticed it's not in the parking lot. The mayor's former car.
Oh, the one that he was letting everybody else use?
Right. I mean,
we don't know.
Then we should know. We should track that down. I mean, who's using the car? I mean, we're on the hook if it ends somewhere else, and if it ends in the canals.
The last that was reported to us was from the mayor, who said he was letting department heads use it when they went out of town. That was the last we were told. But
no, that's correct. And the treasurer's office actually is in charge of it, essentially. So if you need to use the car, you have to make sure it's okay with the mayor. You have to request from the treasurer's office. They get you the keys. They control it.
Can you find out what department heads don't have a car? Because I know the Board of Health has a car, the building department has a car, the DPW has a car, the fire department has a car.
The law department doesn't have a car.
Right. Well, the law department.
Do you get the mileage, Sarah? If you or Kara or whatever had to go to Boston, isn't that you're on that system? Like you put in your.
We can request reimbursement, or conversely, we could use the car. The car. And we wouldn't request reimbursement.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So. My reason for going to the stipend was because I wanted the mayor to give the car back to the police department. But the car was stripped of all its equipment, so the police department didn't want it back. So that was what I describe as an epic fail on my part in terms of achieving a goal. So I would recommend that we give the mayor back the car and cut out the stipend and don't give him the mileage. Just let him drive the car.
Right, but I mean, the other thought is that he was driving up to Amherst to teach a class at UMass on Fridays.
I know.
So I mean, are we going to pay him for that stipend although whether it's for the betterment of the city or the betterment of his resume, the fact of the matter is just he was driving 45 minutes up north to teach a class. Don't know if we were paying him or not, but $600 a month. I mean, I drive every day, and I have to log my miles for a stipend, and I don't get anywhere near that at all.
Right. So if I can chime in, my preference would be to say the federal mileage rate or $300 a month as the cap.
Well, I think he should.
So if he, for some reason, said I go to Boston every day, and it's 100 miles, and it's $50 a day, you know what I'm saying?
He's a department head. Why can't he just take the car?
Well, right.
Well, that's my point.
I would think it would, Danny.
I know. So I think you should just act.
That's my point. Just give him the car back.
Now
that we know it's sitting there.
Completely and go with the federal mileage rate like everybody else.
I think that makes the most fair sense. That's what all the other employees got. And if you travel to Boston, then you get the car. And if you use it to go to Springfield or whatever, and you use your own personal, we pay you mileage, just like everybody else. Seems fair. Is that a motion? Second. Was that a motion? I don't know. Is that what you were moving, Counselor? Or what was your proposal?
What's written, I'm willing to discuss anything, but this seems to be the most economical of the choices, right? So why not go with that?
Motion is delete the stipend and go to the travel policy allotted federal rate. And
now, when's this effective? Upon passage.
Upon passage.
Okay. So
federal rate upon submission.
Come again?
Well, he has to follow the policies like anybody else. He has to do a sheet.
Well, he can use that car.
Or he can use the car.
Yeah, I would think he would. If
you don't get both, you don't get to use the car and get the mileage, but you get,
I would hope not.
What dictates when you use the car and when you don't use it?
His judgment.
Common sense.
So do the math. If he went to Boston,
he can do whatever he wants. He's the mayor.
If he went to Boston,
if one person's going to Boston, right? I think the person traveling the longest distance in a particular day would be the one using the car.
I'm not talking about going to Boston and going to New York to talk at Moody's. I'm talking about tomorrow he wants to use the car to drive around.
Well, he could do that right now.
So now we're giving him a stipend and a car.
No, we're not. No stipend. No, we're taking the stipend away. He's going to get mileage or use of the car.
Mileage would be his own car.
Right.
Right. So you don't get both. So if he uses the city car, he's not going to get the mileage. He won't get anything then.
Right.
If he drives his personal vehicle, he'll get the mileage, like the regular employees.
Because it never really changed. He got the stipend plus the car. That's how it ended up. He got the stipend and the car.
The ordinance specifies like the use of city-owned vehicles, so I'd suggest just adding the mayor to the list, like the police chief, the fire chief, who get the cars.
No, isn't that cars that they can take?
Oh, that's right, that they can take home.
Yeah. We don't want that.
Okay. So then it would just be removing the stipend, and then it would fall under the.
Then even if you want to put a line, the mayor will be subject to the travel policy for employees, either or. If you want to spell it out one more step, that way it makes it totally fair. He gets whatever everybody else gets.
Fair and transparent.
That's what we believe in here.
Amen.
That's what I'm about. God bless America.
And our ships at sea.
And the city council.
And Chicopee.
And Dan Bresnahan. And Nelson Roman.
And Ward 3.
All right.
All right, we got that. We got it all covered.
All right, so I believe we have a motion, Madam Chair. Go ahead. Did you have anything else?
Well, yes, we do have a motion, but if we have a worst case, how much did you get paid to drive to Boston?
I got whatever the IRS rate. It's about 51, 55. It fluctuates. IRS sets a table every year.
Okay, so it's, say, roughly 200 miles, so how many dollars? So assuming the person says, hey, I go to Boston every day.
You'd get about $100 if you went round trip to Boston.
Every day.
He doesn't go to Boston every single day.
I'm just saying. I'm just playing out the worst case scenario.
Yes.
Oh, you take the car. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
True that, yeah.
I assure you that'll be a lot less than $600 a month, though.
I think we should give him back the car. I think we should give him back the car that's sitting in the parking lot.
No. Well, how did that work out?
Well,
Northampton PD didn't take a high opinion of that. So let's just, there was a reason we changed that.
We're dragging up all sorts of history.
Yeah, well, let's not go there, in my opinion. Let's see how this works, and if that turns out to be like he's getting some great windfall, I think it's going to be fair. I think the man will use his good judgment, and you know,
absolutely.
And then we don't have to worry about who's driving the car and do they have licenses and all this other stuff. Let's, you know.
Okay.
We go.
Okay. So we have a motion before us to have the mayor under the regular travel policy. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All okay. Passes.
Motion to take up number 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 12, filed by Councilor Jourdain, ordered that ordinances related to ancillary structures be reviewed for possible revisions, particularly as it relates to garages.
Didn't he need a little more time?
We did get a correspondence from Damien Cody, and he said he's about a month behind.
Okay.
Because it's been, I guess, relatively warm, so he's had more work. So he's looking for it to take about 6 more weeks.
That's fine. We can just table this.
Okay.
Motion table.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye. Motion to remove item 13.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Filed by Councilor Bartley, ordered that the City Council review the city's laws relative to the licensing of B&Bs. Specifically, the City Council ensure that approval from the Building Commissioner and Holyoke Fire Department are necessary prerequisites. Oh, can we suspend rules and take up 14 too?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 14, filed by Councilor Bresnahan, ordered that the City of Holyoke Ordinance Committee discuss creating regulations with respect to the air bed and breakfast located within the City of Holyoke. And Councilor Bresnahan did hand me a copy of an ordinance on that, but I'm not sure I can put my hands on it this second.
From Boston.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Councilor Bartley or Councilor Bresnahan, whoever wants to go first. Actually, I think we held this because Councilor Bresnahan couldn't be here last time. We had a discussion.
Yeah, well, we had Damien in here a month ago, and I think at that point we had a good discussion, but it was my opinion that he was missing the point, and the point was to make this a proactive requirement, a prerequisite, if you will. So, right in the ordinance, that's all. So I just like to put in legal form and review it. Thank you. Oh, shoot, that's right.
Oh, right.
Because we're changing, yes, right. That was our advice from Sarah last
Right,
month.
but we did leave it tabled because Council Bresnahan couldn't be here, I think. And then,
Should we just set it up for,
Well, either that or, give one of them leave to withdraw. Give one of them leave to withdraw and let's just work on one of them. The B, just today, Dave, the B&B you're talking about, are you talking about the Airbnb or like Jay's Bed and Breakfast that we just got through on Dwight Street? Because the Airbnb is kind of it's like, an internet thing that.
No, I'm familiar with it.
No, I know you are.
It was specifically, we have an ordinance on the book relative to bed and breakfast. This was written way before Airbnbs were even thought of.
Right.
So and that's the ordinance that is on the books is the ordinance that Jay's on Dwight Street followed.
Right.
It was at that time, Dan, that during that discussion, and Damien Cody wrote me an email afterwards, says, well, per the ordinance, we don't even have to give our permission, neither does the fire department, until they come back for what? A renewal of the special permit. So we went ahead and made sure at committee level that they got all their requirements beforehand, and then we went ahead and approved the special permit. But I just tabled this in my own mind till down the road, which is here, to say that makes no sense to have people dwelling in a rooming house and not have it subject to prerequisites to have a fire department inspection and building commissioner inspection. That was a simple gist of this thing.
No, I think that
an Airbnb should be subject to the same.
And I agree. And the conversation I had was that, well, if they're not serving breakfast, they typically don't fall under the bed and breakfast ordinance that we currently have, or the zoning. So the 9 Airbnbs that are currently operating just basically responded to the building department and said, hey, we don't do breakfast.
We don't do, yeah. So
we're not doing breakfast anymore. So now they've kind of found out that, I just think that, this was, I didn't even know about this thing till someone in the neighborhood contacted me and said, hey, my neighbor's house is, the people are renting rooms over here. Then we can also talk about whether or not that, if you have a fax line in your house as a home occupancy, there's a process you have to go to, right? To get a permit, you have to have a home occupancy permit. These folks are basically, their homes are becoming businesses. Is there a,
So the question becomes, do we need a new ordinance, or are we simply not enforcing home occupation ordinance that already exists?
Well, the
bed and breakfast ordinance that already exists.
Change the language of the bed and B&B ordinance.
Point, we need to have a public hearing if we're amending the ordinance. But if it's a matter that we're not enforcing our home occupation ordinance, that's a different question.
Correct. If this topic is about a zone change for that's where the public or a special. But if we were to say, like Boston, the licensing board for the city of Boston handles Airbnb. You want an Airbnb, you got to go to the license board. I'm just throwing thoughts out here. I have no dog in this race, so to speak. But if we were to say the license board handles this, it's a $50 fee. You got to be inspected by the building department and the fire department annually on your renewal of your license, and then we determine what. Then either the tax collector determines whether or not this property should be being taxed on a different classification.
Okay, so to that point, to Sarah, if we wanted to make it subject to licensing, as Councilor Bresnahan is stating, would that require a public hearing because it would require an amendment to the ordinance or not? No. Okay. Can you come to the mic just in case?
Your licensing, you're not restricting where it's located. You're just restricting the use. So that can be done just through, it doesn't need a public hearing, but it has to be an amendment to our ordinances. If you're restricting, the special permits are going to say where it's located, zoning is going to say where it's located.
Okay, so what is the preference, the intent of the makers of the order? Is it simply that they have licenses so we know where they are and what they're doing and that they're safe?
Can we can we put in the language that, you know, abutters within a certain distance have to be notified that this is taking place? I mean, without the public, I mean, let's say if your neighbor decides to do a bed and breakfast, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't imagine you bought a house next. If you wanted to live next to a bed and breakfast, that's great. But I mean, can we put something in to the wording of like you have to notify abutters of 300 feet, or the direct abutter, which is the neighbor that lives right next door to you?
If this were are you talking about a special permit or a license?
A license.
So
a license. So, and I mean, you could, I assume you could put language in that says you have to notify abutters. The issue is going to be, is the discretion in giving that license based on the location or based on the use and the operations? Because if the discretion is going to be based on, you know, we don't want this here, it's really a zoning regulation, and I mean, it could be subject to challenge without going through the process for.
I mean, I don't think, for me personally, it was not a matter of where it was. It was more of a matter of letting them know what's taking place, making sure that it's safe.
Yes.
And if there's a tax, you know, if there's some, I mean, if they're making money off their home as a business, I think that turns it into a different tax classification. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have people selling candles. And they all go through this whole process, and they have no traffic at their homes. But now we have this Airbnb internet, you know, craze going on, and people are making money, and you know, I mean, give on to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Roman?
Yes, sir. I agree with Councilor Bresnahan. I think that for me it's about the usage and not necessarily the location, but around the usage of it doesn't matter where it's located, it could be anywhere, but exactly that. Tomorrow, I mean, theoretically, even apartments, you could just rent out an apartment building if you have an extra bedroom and it's an Airbnb room. So I think it's more on the usage, irregardless of where the location is. And so similar to like when Uber came into town and the internet is rapidly changing our markets, we had to regulate that. I think it's the same concept, more around the usage. So if you could draft language on the usage, because literally, theoretically, it could be anywhere that has an extra spare bedroom, you would qualify. And so then my thing gets into, it could be apartment buildings, it could be, if you have a low-income unit, you're going to start Airbnb-ing your room tomorrow, or whether you have a house on the river tomorrow, you're going to Airbnb it. So I think, irregardless of zoning, if we can draft it around usage, it eliminates the need for that, and we need to regulate that, because for me, regardless of where it is, if, again, same concept, tomorrow my neighbor upstairs wants to be an Airbnb or someone down on Main Street wants to be an Airbnb, I think the abutters should know, and we should draft language around that. Thank you.
And I can certainly look to see what other cities and towns have done to see if I can find any draft language and try to put something together on a license, essentially.
Okay, thanks for your input, Council Roman. What is the preference of the makers of the orders?
The law department puts some language together for a review and sends it to us.
For license, you want to go into the license?
I mean,
for the license?
I don't. Right now, it's by city council special permit for B&B. So we'd have to. I mean, I don't think we can just change that to an ordinance, right? It's. Yeah, I'm of no appetite to have a B&B regulated just by the license board. I want it under the jurisdiction of city council. Is that what you're asking me, Madam Chair?
I was hearing two trains of thought. One seemed to be leading toward licensing versus an amendment to the ordinance, and the other option is to amend the ordinance to include those types, which are not.
That's what I would favor.
And I would suggest, because I know your concern was about the inspections to the property,
yes.
That would be if someone were required to get a special permit and a license congruently, both of those would overlap to an extent. So I'd suggest exploring the option of a license, and then if there needs to be changes to the special permit regulations, then scheduling a public hearing and going that route.
So now for my clarification, if we go the license route, that B&B that just went through everything they went through for the special permit, in that example, would they then have just gone to the license board?
No, it wouldn't. It doesn't change. They might have to get both.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it. But if I can find an example, and if I can come up with language that's legal, and we can have this discussion again,
okay,
about a license that works, it could be read congruently.
What is the wish of the committee?
Well, let's see what her language
Look
is.
at-
I say
you
see what
wanna
the language is, and
look at
we'll, yeah.
Okay, so then we need a motion to table until we receive a draft legal.
I'll moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. My pen would write.
Let's see, so that takes care of 13, 14, right? Mm-hmm. So motion to remove 15
Second.
from the table?
All in favor?
Aye.
This is filed by Council Roman, that the City of Holyoke strengthen its residency requirements for employees. This includes all interim department heads and all non-union positions. Also, that an interim department head shall only be allowed to be a non-resident for 1 year after given the title, and then must relocate to the City of Holyoke in order to continue on in said position. I do believe we received a list relative to your order. Do you have it?
I know Sarah sent it out through email.
It was the list of those who come under it.
Come under, yes. And I just met with the law department this week around draft language for the committee.
Oh, hang on.
And I would urge the committee's approval of it. And I know that some of the conversations I had with the law department when I read it was around the specific department heads that were part of the professional services union. And, you know, Sarah and I had discussed that. And for me, we can still pass the language. And when it comes time for arbitration, letting them know that this is the new law of the City of Holyoke. But I think it brings into streamlining all of those positions, and also with the concerns of, and I like the language that she had drafted based off of Councilor Jourdain's recommendations, that any department heads currently in the position would be grandfathered in. And that if you happen to be laid off from your position and come back, you would still be grandfathered in. So I thought it was exceptional legal language that Sarah had drafted and sent out to the committee, so I would urge recommendation.
I'll make a motion that be adopted.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I do have it, Sarah. Thank you. You sent it so long ago.
Make a motion item 16 be removed from the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This was filed by Councilor Roman, that any seasonal amusement attraction that will be in operation longer than 14 days wanting to operate in the City of Holyoke receive a special permit by the Holyoke City Council. This will ensure community input and conditions, if any, are included and protected.
So through you, Madam Chairwoman, I would actually urge the committee that this order be complied with. I'll be filing an order at our next City Council meeting based on recommendations from the Law Department. This does, because I'm requiring a zoning change, we have some draft language that will be provided attached with this order that I'll be filing. It'll basically be to the effect that we amend the zoning ordinances to establish a special permit of the City Council for seasonal amusement attractions, and so that would need to have a public hearing with the Planning and Ordinance. So I would just like to see this be complied with, and you'll see at our next City Council meeting this new order that I'll be filing along with the legal language.
Motion the orders comply with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a point of order. We were hopeful, obviously that can't happen this meeting because it's not on the agenda, but we're hopeful for the next meeting. One, it won't be in December, it'll be in January. And then second of all, we can have the McIntosh Terrace, because we had that language kind of good to go, but that's, it's not on the agenda, and that's okay. So we'll just...
was that the parking
Yeah,
permit?
Special permit. It's not on the agenda.
For the
So
parking?
yeah, we can wait till January.
The residents?
Yeah, resident-only parking. Yeah.
I think I had it in my mind to do all those things when Yem could be here, but
great.
that one I should have put on because it was
That's
done,
okay.
really.
So just whenever you do in January.
For the next meetings, in that same vein, I have one for a handicap space on Dwight Street in front of the hair salon.
Ward 6 in action.
Yep, Ward 6 progress.
This is what happens.
This is it.
Now,
so,
did that already go to council and it's with disabilities?
No, it's not an actual handicap space for a person. It's to put one on the street for anybody that would be handicapped. Just to put a handicap spot there on Dwight Street. So that should just be an ordinance change here.
But
doesn't require disability commission approval.
All right, but has it already been?
It's been filed. It's in ordinance committee. So I was just asking if you could throw that on the next agenda, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now we do have the 4 handicapped applications before us, and
are the recommendations all to approve?
Hang on.
We can take these as a package, right?
I'm hoping
they're all the same. Yeah.
Usually, what happens is
30 Portland. Look at that. Ward 6.
189 Beach. Generally, they come to me, but I can't assume they're all approved unless I look at it, and I just didn't have time. Okay, 552 South Summer. Okay, let's take them one at a time. 189 Beach.
Motion to take number 17 off the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So. Don Welch went out to the site on 11/28 and recommends that the application be approved.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to take number 18 off the table.
So moved. Okay.
30 Portland.
Hang on, I've got.
It's an
South
important
Summer.
one.
I've got South Summer. If I can sell you that one.
No, that would be. There should be one here. Right here. Here I am. Right here. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
It's a big one.
What's up?
Okay.
Word 6, making things happen.
Now, countdown. I'm getting to the right page.
Drum roll.
Okay, a site visit was made by Don Welch on 12/1, and the recommendation that the application be approved.
Motion approved.
Sent
Second.
to us. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to take 19 off the table.
Second.
552 South Summer Street.
That should be Nelson's.
3R.
A site visit was made on, looks like 7/28/16.
Or is it 11? I think it's 11.
Oh, it must be an 11.
It's an 11.
Just looks funny. Recommend that the application be approved.
Motion approved.
Second.
And
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye. Motion to take number 20 off the table.
Second.
Three out of 4.
11 Center Street.
11 Center. That's all marijuana.
Ward 1.
Uh-oh.
Anything there with Gladys's name on it?
I'm not seeing it yet.
Ward 1 counselor on the job.
Uh-oh. If you don't mind double checking, I'll see if it's clipped with these. No, this is I'm not seeing it, but I have enough confidence that we have the paperwork. I'll go by the will of the committee, but if we
I'll make a motion that it be approved pending Disability Commission approval.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
And then just for the next meeting, before we adjourn, Madam Chair, next meeting?
The next meeting will be the second Monday.
Our faithful assistant has found it.
Oh, thank you.
Look at this boy. Look at this guy.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that is just
Look at this guy.
total perfect timing. I make a motion to reconsider our action on 20.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion that be drum roll.
They should put his page on top. Oh, this is different.
That looks like the old form.
I don't know. Hang on. Usually he's right here.
There's no inspection report. Oh, hold on. What's this say? This one can be approved unless you hear from me before the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
The page of approval is missing Dick Welch.
It would have been easy if I just saw that first. Is our meeting not on website?
Oh, Dick, all right, whatever.
Okay. All right.
A separate issue.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so.
Hopefully he's referring to his own meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. So on reconsideration, a motion to approve.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Any housekeeping items or?
Next meeting date.
The next meeting will be
I got it January 10th.
the second Tuesday of January. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot of good work. I mean, we don't have our products probably till the next meeting, but
Yeah,
we're getting